Welcome to another episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Our division preview series continues. We're going to be taking a look at the AFC North, the ultra-competitive AFC North division that had 4 teams with winning records in 2023. Will that be the same in 2024? Let's find out. Before we get there, though, we're going to be talking about recent NFL news that's happened in our other divisions that we've already covered. So if we don't talk about it now, we're never going to get back to it. And I, of course, am joined, as always, by the co-pilots, Byron and Joe. How are we doing?
Yeah, great. Yeah, football back this week. So loving it, yeah.
We have the Hall of Fame game back on, I guess, today, because that's when this will go out, Thursday morning. On Thursday, the Hall of Fame game in Canton.
Bears-Texans.
Bears-Texans, yes.
Don't think we'll get much of a lock at Caleb Williams and CJ Stroud, but it's football. It's back.
It is football, and it is back. The Pro Football Hall of Fame game. And we're just getting close now. We're about 5 weeks away. Yeah. 5 weeks away now from kickoff. Joe, how are you getting on?
Yeah, doing all good out here. Like I said, just super excited for the NFL starting and covering, I think, 2 weeks in a row, probably the best 2 divisions. So it's exciting to be in the AFC or NFC North.
Yes, the North's where it's at, I think, for 2024.
As always, North's better than the South, as always.
The North will rise again. Let's get on with some news, though, because there's a couple of bits. So we've already covered AFC and NFC East, and we're about to do our AFC North, about to get to halfway through the series. There's been a bit of news, some big news. We talked about there's a few quarterbacks left that are likely going to get contracts, and 2 of them got paid and got extensions over the last few days. Tua in Miami and Jordan Love both get paid. Let's start with Jordan Love. Any surprise on the amount? He's joint with Burrow and Lawrence at $55 million a year.
Truthfully, not really. It just feels like it's such a template now where the next one who comes along who's a top 12-ish quarterback is going to get paid that amount. In a salary cap league and salary cap format, there isn't really the scope to differentiate them too much, I don't think. All Mahomes would be getting, a lot more than everyone else. But I just think if you show enough and the team believes in you, you're going to get, whoever gets paid next, whether it's Dak Prescott, fingers crossed as Cowboys fan, Dak Prescott, he'll probably get around the exact same amount for, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it might end up being. Maybe a little more fully guaranteed because he's proven more, but I don't think anyone's going too far off the template. And I don't think there's anything to incentivize the quarterbacks to take under the market because, if you don't take it, if you don't get it from your current team, someone else will pay you after a franchise tag a year or 2. So I think the market's kind of, I'm not going to say stagnant, but I don't know, maybe that is the best word for it. Like, it's just, you kind of know what's coming. I think it's going to be the same with the receivers as well. CD Lamb coming up and Jamar Chase coming up. They're all going to settle in and around where Justin Jefferson is. Maybe a little under, maybe a little over, but it'll be that range.
Yeah, so the contract for Love in full, $220 million over 4 years, including $75 million guaranteed. How cool must it be just to get $75 million?
That signing bonus is all being paid by December as well. So by the end of the year, you'll have that $75 million just sitting in his bank account or wherever he keeps his money, probably under his bed. I'm not too sure. But
yeah. So Aaron Rodgers,
not a bad gig.
Aaron Rodgers was pitching Jordan Love to buy his house that he's still got in Green Bay. Now he's got all that money.
Yeah, there's a darkness den just down the bottom of the garden, I'm sure. But yeah, really not a bad gig for, 9 wins did we say he had when we done the NFC North preview? 17, 18 starts in his career. 1 playoff win. Not bad going.
Yeah. And then, Joe, we saw Tua Tunga. I'm not in mid-season.
Tua
Tagovailoa get his contract for the Miami Dolphins. A little bit under where Love and Lawrence and Joe Burrow are. $53.5 million a year. Tua signed. We weren't sure whether Miami were going to show the faith. They have done, and they've got Tua tied down for the next few years. Good move. It's a good deal for Tua and all involved.
Well, I think, certainly good for Tua. I was surprised how quick it came because it didn't seem like anyone was talking about it. And I always felt like Tua was in that weird spot where, does Miami actually believe in him? Do they actually think anyone else would give him that big contract? But obviously they thought yes. And similar to what Byron said, like, if you're in the top 12, top 14, you're going to get one of these big contracts, and it's just going to whoever comes up next. So yeah, and I think it's like an extension, so it looks like it's 3 years, and then the 4th year they might be able to get out of it. So I think it works. Tua McDaniels work perfectly together. It's they managed to sort that out. So, but yeah, I was just surprised how quick it came, and obviously they've sorted everything out now, and hopefully have a good preseason for the season coming up because they've got that issue out the way.
Excellent, yeah. Tua tied down in Miami. 4 years, 212.4 million extension, works out 53.1 average annual of the contract. That puts him 4th at the minute behind the 3 at 55 million a year average in Burrow, Love, and Trevor Lawrence. Couple of other bits. I suppose the other main bits, couple of bits of sad news, I guess. We saw Cowboys pass rusher, the end, Sam Williams, go down with I think it was everything, ACL, MCL, the full shebang, done for the year. This is probably the worst part of training camp for me, just sort of seeing these players who've kind of waited this time, get back on the field, and then all of a sudden, before you've even got close to the start of the season, you're done, and it's going to be more than 12 months before you get back on the field. Sad to see for Sam Williams. Just not quite working out for him at the Cowboys so far. And there's an opportunity there, I think, to kind of get a bigger role from him, given the players that the Cowboys have lost on the line.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. It's an area of need. So, he's one of the few front 7 players who didn't go to Washington, it feels like. And instead he's gone to the hospital and out for the season, confirmed already. Yeah, it just feels like, again, being down on the Cowboys season, early doors already, lack of depth on the defense, I think is going to be a factor. And yeah, it's a bummer of news because, yeah, you hope for a player coming into his 3rd season, I believe, might be his best year yet and push on. And yeah, certainly isn't going to help his cause going into year 4 next year. So yeah, it just sucks for him, sucks for the Cowboys, and not a position they can lose depth at, I don't think so.
No, yeah, I think they're going to be in the market for a veteran somewhere now, just because of that depth. And you don't want to rely too much on Parsons. And I wonder if the strategy with what they were going to do with him this year is slightly changed just because they're having to react to this news. And yeah, it's not good luck for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think it creates an opportunity though, as it does. Marshall Nealand to have an even bigger role as well. He's the second rounder this year. Sam Williams second rounder in 2022 out of Ole Miss. And yeah, other people need to turn up. Didn't see much of Fehoko last year. He's an opportunity. He was out of the 2023 draft class. There's an opportunity to push on, and maybe that's also an opportunity for Chancey Golson as well. And the other bit of news: Christian Barmore in New England, more illness than injury, I guess, suffering from blood clots. Looks to be in a bad way, and that could be a huge miss for the Patriots, who are already pretty talent deficient.
Yeah, one of the best defenses in the league, to be fair to New England. Getting Christian Gonzalez back, but Barmore's probably their best player, period, on offense or defense. And, obviously we've already done the AFC East preview. My bronze bet was the Patriots to go winless, which, it's a big price for a reason. Probably will win 1 or 2 games here or there, but man, that really doesn't help losing your best defensive player. So, more bad news for New England, really. Hopefully wish him well. Hopefully back fit soon. I believe he's out of the hospital already. I think Gerard Mayo confirmed this morning he's in good spirits. But in terms of him coming back to football, I have no idea what a timeline would look like. So just wish him well health-wise, yeah, because I think football might be off the radar for the short while at least.
Yeah, I was going to say the good news is that they've actually spotted it, because obviously if they didn't, it would be a hell of a lot worse and it would be a massive story, and obviously sad for everyone involved. So yeah, so shout out to all the doctors and everyone at the Patriots who spotted it early to stop the worst thing from happening.
Yeah, stop it before you get any worse. So Best wishes to Christian Barmore. Hopefully, well soon and back on the field. That takes us into our AFC North preview. Like I said, we've said one of the most exciting divisions in football for sure. All 4 teams with winning records last year. We've got 2 great guests joining us. We're going to have a guest for the Browns and a guest for the Steelers. We're going to flip over now and talk about the Ravens and the Bengals before we hit the first of our 2 guests. So here's over to us talking about the Ravens and the Bengals. We'll kickstart our AFC North preview with a look at the team that not only won the division, but was also the number 1 seed in the AFC. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens and get kickstart into the preview. We're also going to take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals as well in this segment, as we've no guest, unfortunately. But Ravens first. Let's start by having a look at the Ravens. 13-4. Was enough to win the division and was also enough to be first seed in the AFC. The legendary preseason win record ended, but they set an NFL record with 10 wins over teams that finished with winning records in 2023. Dominant defense and MVP Lamar Jackson led the way to home field advantage. Championship game is where the Ravens run ended. They went down to the wire. It went down to the wire with a 17-10 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Felt like a big opportunity was missed for the Ravens. Byron, how would you sum up the 2023 season for the Baltimore Ravens?
I mean, regular season, incredible. Playoffs, fine until it wasn't. I mean, that championship game, I think, is going to haunt them, really, because they just seem to get away from being who they are. And I don't really know what happened. I don't know if they've really thought that they are going to come out and say exactly what went wrong, but it felt like the game plan just went out the window so early, and they were never down by a lot. So I didn't quite understand it, truthfully. But, I mean, if they can take that regular season again, they will snatch your hand off and just need to, come up big when it matters again.
Yeah, they were the NFL's leading rushing team in 2023. Went for, I think it's 157 yards a game on the deck. And then they just got away from it against the Chiefs. And like I say, it wasn't as if they were massively down. I don't think they were any more than 10 points down at any given point in that game.
Yeah.
And they just completely came away from it. And it played perfectly into the Chiefs' hands. They were able to get pressure, pressure on Jackson and also the corners that were so good all year for the Chiefs were able to kind of suffocate and stick to the receivers. And it just never got going. And a very, very, very disappointing end to the season at home. Kind of felt that they were primed to beat the Chiefs and then go on to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Joe, kind of how did you feel? I mean, focus on that game. What was it you think that made the Ravens change their game plan?
No idea. It's like you said, it was so surprising just because it worked all year. I know the Chiefs had a great defense. They're certainly up there with them, but it was such a tight game. Then they just threw it away. Obviously, some mistakes with Zay Flowers taunting and the fumble as well certainly cost it to get even closer. But it was just disappointing with a team, like Byron said, just dominated. And I think the 4 losses, I think some of them they should have won them as well and cost us a decent amount of money. How many times we bet against them against the NFC or big favourites at home. So I think it's a strange one where they were just so good, and then it was just the whole, Lamar Jackson, the playoffs came up again because it was probably his worst game of the season when it was the most important. So, disappointing is the main word I would say.
And I kind of felt that they might have put the issues that they've had in the playoffs recently to bed with the wins that they had during the regular season against kind of some top opposition. When you look at kind of who they beat, they beat the Bengals early in the season, before kind of, the Bengals unraveled, beat the Rams, beat the Niners, beat,
Lions,
the Dolphins, beat the Lions, and like the Niners and the Dolphins game in particular, where they just kind of just hammered those teams. They hammered the Lions, didn't they? I think by 30 odd points. I kind of thought that was
38-6. Yeah, it's like
38-6, and thought that kind of would set them up to kind of go on a good run in the postseason. But yeah, it just kind of, and I kind of felt early in that game that just everything went out the window, and it was just kind of the Chiefs that were going to win that game. Very strange one. Let's start having a look forwards for the Ravens. That's 2023. Off-season headlines in Baltimore, in Charm City. Number of players and coaches flying the nest. Included DC Mike McDonald, who left his defensive farm to Zach Orr. Mike McDonald out in Seattle now as the head coach. King Henry has arrived, but can his royalty be the difference to gain the ultimate crown? Or will the offensive line restructure be sorry, Mr. Jackson?
Ooh.
Wow, good work there, Joe. Let's talk about, first of all, impact. So Mike McDonald gone from a defensive coordinator position, taking up his role as head coach in Seattle. Do we expect that to be a big impact and a big loss for the Ravens, or is Zach Orr going to be okay kind of taking over a pretty talented unit?
I think it's always hard to tell. Like, we know, coming in, we didn't really know what Mac McDonald was, and it was turned out to be a really, really good head coach. DC, sorry. Zach Orr is young. This is his first defensive coordinator job. We don't know. We expect the Ravens to have good coaching because they always do, essentially. So presumably he will be a good DC. But with how Mike McDonald got that defense forming last year, it's a known commodity versus an unknown commodity, really. And I think what really doesn't help is just a talent loss as well. And that defense, again, we expect the Ravens to be able to get the best out of anything they have in the building because that's what they do. But on paper, it doesn't look easy.
I mean, it's quite a long list, and we'll get to that. But one of those, I suppose, important guys has not only stayed in the division, has ended up at their biggest rivals in the Steelers. Lost a few key players from the secondary as well. It's interesting to be interesting to kind of see how Zach Orr shapes that defense moving forward. Talk about Derrick Henry, of course, we have to. Big arrival in free agency. We've seen Dobbins go, Gus Edwards go. They've gone to the same place, I think, other than the Chargers. Yeah. Gordon didn't really work out. Dalvin Cook never really worked out. All gone. And now we've got kind of that new running back room with King Derrick Henry. The forward. Can he fulfill the roles that all those did? Because all those had very, very different roles in Dobbins and Edwards. Well, whenever Dobbins could actually get on the field. And Edwards, is he going to be able to fulfill all those? Or do you think the Ravens are going to have to get bits and pieces from other guys as well?
I think I remember this Keaton Mitchell still there. And obviously he had the stretch where it looked like, the Ravens have found another young player who's going to take the league by storm. Obviously another player who got injured last year. So he's coming back. So I think he's obviously going to fulfill the speed and the change of pace. But, I think everyone was clamoring for Henry to be on this Ravens team. It just felt like a match made in heaven, especially with having Lamar there. So you've got two of the best, the best running quarterback and arguably, top 2 or 3 best running back in the last, decade, possibly, if you look at it. So I think he's going to fulfill that role. Obviously, we'll see, he's certainly got some tread on the tires. Titans used him a lot. So hopefully I think I just want to see one good year out of him in Baltimore. I think it'll be fun and exciting just to have them two and, throw some Mitchell in sometimes just to change it up. But I think that's super exciting when you look at that backfield. But like the bottom point mentions is with all the changes on the offensive line as well, can that hold up to help the running game? Because, there's a lot of players who have lost it, certainly on the inside. With Zeitler going and Moses and Simpson and a few others. It's going to be a change. But if the Ravens do Ravens things, they'll probably have some players who we've never heard of suddenly step up and certainly help them out. So for me, it's super exciting. I can't wait to see how they use him and how they use him and Jackson and how they intertwine that relationship.
Excellent. Well, we talked about some of the moves. So let's go on and have a look at the rest of, I suppose, the key moves. We talked about the addition of Derrick Henry, Eddie Jackson, Josh Jones. We've got Cal Van Noy. Who else have we had? Not some more extensions, I guess, than that. And then on the loss side, I think we talked Patrick Queen headed to Pittsburgh, Davian Clowney, Dobbins, Zeitler, and Simpson off the O-line as well. Derrick Henry, probably, quite possibly a big impact. Anybody that we've not, I suppose, talked about that might be kind of a factor, an X factor coming in?
I don't think so, truthfully. I think that is your big veterans who have come in.
I do like Eddie Jackson. I think they signed him only like a few weeks ago as safety. And that's the kind of Baltimore move where they get these veterans in just to, it's like depth. And, he might have one of them starting roles with some of the players left. So I always like them kind of moves where it's not the first wave free agency. It's not the second or third. It's getting them in just before camp and letting them slide in. Because you mentioned some of the players who they've lost. There's like Odell's gone, Duvernay, Ronald Darby, Rocky Sin, Geno Stone, Darryl Worley. There's quite a lot where I only could fit 5 on, but I could have put quite a few more on where it's been some big losses compared to how many players they've been able to bring in.
Potentially a big youth movement sweeping Baltimore. Let's have a look at the draft then. That ties in nicely. They took Nate Wiggins at 30, the cornerback out of Clemson. Again, that secondary you just mentioned there, tied in nicely. Darby, Rocky Sin, both went. Needed somebody in there as well. Who else do we like there? Any kind of names there from the draft class that we like and I think can make an instant impact?
I know Rasheen Ali got a lot of hype once he was drafted by the Ravens. I think, the O-line is a big worry, but essentially if you can run fast and Lamar Jackson will open up those little gaps for you by being Lamar Jackson, it does give him an opportunity to come in and compete for that running back 2 role immediately with just Justice Hill behind Derrick Henry until Keaton Mitchell's fit. Other than that, I think Adisa Isaac as well, they're going to need pretty instant production from him. Losing Clowney, their edges, again, on Baltimore, like very thin. So I think there's an opportunity for him to come in and get starts right away. So.
Yeah, and you've also got Roger Rosengarten as well, who's penciled in to start right tackle in his first year, which you never want to chuck a rookie straight in there if he's suddenly not ready. And obviously you've got Stanley at left tackle, but he's not really been the player the last few years because of all the injuries. So can he stay fit, and will you start have to using these, like we mentioned, these rookies or these depth guys on the line? So I think he'll probably play quite a lot, as well as Nate Wiggins. I think is also a big one because I think he's going to have to start as well.
Yeah, he's going to have to start and be a difference maker quite quickly to support that secondary. I like the Rasheen Ali pick as well. I think he had a couple of big years at Marshall in 21 and 23. Loves to find the end zone. 23 touchdowns in 21, 15 touchdowns in 2023 at Marshall. So, yeah, he could be one. Again, I think the difficulty he may have, as you've got mentioned, or we've already mentioned, Keaton Mitchell. There's also Justice Hill there, who's pretty trusted hand in Baltimore as well, pretty reliable. So, he's going to have to probably beat Justice Hill out as well. To kind of see any significant playing time as a third option. Let's get to the lines. Let's get to the odds. Ravens were the number 1 seed, 13-4 last year. Their line over under 11.5 wins. So 11 or 12 wins is kind of where Vegas sees them at. Where do you think that is? I think probably the difficult. Ravens haven't put kind of 2 consistently good to great seasons together for a while.
Yeah, I mean, when I was predicting the season, I had them at 10-7, so I'd be taking the under there. But, you'd never be surprised if they get to 12 because, the fundamentals are always so good. They're so well coached. My big scary point for me is that O-line and, Ronnie Stanley's and Lindenbaum are the 2 holdovers, really, and Stanley's so in and out of the lineup as it is. He's not someone you'd want to rely on. But Lamar covers an awful lot of weaknesses in that sense. So, it does make life easier, but it certainly doesn't make it easy. And again, Derrick Henry covers up a lot of O-line wars. He doesn't need as much as a lot of running backs do need, but he isn't getting any younger. You don't want it being hard on him. So yeah, I have him at 10 wins, which is just enough for the playoffs. But I don't think I'll be betting the under, and I don't think I'll be betting them to make the playoffs at minus 290. It's too short of a price to me. I think the one who could just miss out, but I probably expect them to just make it. But I'd probably rather back the plus 220 than the minus 290 just at the prices.
Yeah. The last time Lamar was MVP, the year after they went 8 and 9, and that was another year where the offensive line had massive changes with a few players retiring and leaving. So I think 11.5 is a bit too high for me. I think they'll get close, like you said, just because they've got, superstar quarterback. And I think that defense is going to be fine. I don't know if it's going to be as good as last year. And I also worry about the wide receivers as well. Just quick looking at the depth, and when Aguilar's your third receiver, and even Rashad Bateman's your second, and he's not really kicked on. You've obviously hit with Zay Flowers, but it's putting a whole lot of pressure on Lamar to keep this going. And if they stop the run game, are they going to be in trouble? So, I think I can't see him getting 12. I could see him obviously getting between 9 and 11. So I would probably go the under 2 with the over under.
I did the play through the season last week. Maybe it's the first time I've mentioned it. We've done a couple of recordings, but I've not mentioned it. I don't know how I ended up getting the Ravens to 13-4 again. And I'm not quite sure how 13-4 and the number 1 seed again, which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That I forgot. I think that might change when we get to. I'll run this again when we get closer to the season. I'll get my 13-4 number 1 seed and division winner, of course. So very interesting. Yeah. See, make the playoffs. I think Baltimore were my bet. I bet them not to make the playoffs last year, and they were the number 1 seed. So maybe I shouldn't pass comment on the Baltimore Ravens to win the division. Plus 125. They're favourites to win the division as we stand. Conference winners plus 475, and Super Bowl winner 9-1. I think that Super Bowl winner, it's a bit too short to interest me. The Ravens 9-1.
I'd maybe rather back the Super Bowl than the conference. Truthfully, I think if they make the Super Bowl, they're a good price, but they've got to fight to get that AFC, the Bills, obviously the Chiefs, whoever comes out the AFC East, the Texans. Getting out their own division. Truthfully, none of those really appeal to me. Conference winner at plus 475. It's a tough road to go.
Where are we at now with this Ravens team? Kind of, is it this? They're in for a championship, kind of the way after last year, or would kind of just more kind of playoff success be enough for the Ravens?
I don't think it'll ever be enough, just because of having Lamar Jackson. I think once you've got one of these elite quarterbacks, just getting to the playoffs is no longer just satisfaction. I've mentioned it where there's this, all around Lamar Jackson that he doesn't turn up in the playoffs. So if he gets to the playoffs again and he stinks it out again, that narrative is going to continue. So until he wins it, he's definitely going to. He's one of the quarterbacks similar to like Josh Allen, where he's elite now, but will he go down in history as one of the best? And I think in terms of plays, definitely up there with the best running quarterbacks and probably quarterback in general. But unless you win the big one, that's always the monkey you've got to get off your back. So I think even the team might have come back a little bit. Their expectations should be the Super Bowl. At least get there. I think that's the big thing. At least get to the Super Bowl. And don't shit the bed when you get to the biggest game of the year. I think that's realistically that's what the Ravens should be aiming for, because they'll not be good enough if they don't.
It's been 11 seasons since the Ravens beat the Niners in the Super Bowl in New Orleans back in 2012. The Super Bowl's in New Orleans again. Could we see the Ravens? Could we see the Niners? Who knows? They've not won many playoff games in that period of time. They've only won a couple, and they've only been to the conference championship game once. In the space of it might be ridiculous to say, but given that kind of lack of postseason success, is there pressure on Harbaugh, do you think, to real deliver now with what they've managed to build?
I think it's tough because I think, you look at someone like Mike Tomlin, who's had a very similar, record, and it's like, I just kind of think like it's really tough right now, as it was like in the peak Brady Belichick era, of like, you don't have Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's a really tough thing to overcome. And it's all well and good, like, they have a really good team every year and they just fall short. But, they do only hand out one trophy a year. And realistically, is someone more likely to get you over the top than John Harbaugh? I think it's tough to imagine, truthfully. Same as it is with Pittsburgh. Like, you take out Mike Tomlin, yeah, you might end up with a better draft pick one year, but are you realistically any closer to making the playoffs every year? Probably not. There's a lot to be said for being good all the time. I do find it a tough thing to beat them over the head with, really.
Yeah, and if they have a stink of the year, there's got something big would have happened. I still think so. I think you would either have at least another year or two, even if they do have a stink of the year, just because he's got that track record and who else is out there, I think. And I think because the expectation is, I think it's big, but it's not like someone like the Cowboys or someone like that where they've got the media expectations, while the Ravens is more internal and how people see them. But it's not like, every day we're talking about the Ravens. It's not that kind of pressure. So, and they're actually played, like we mentioned in the intro, played the best division in the league. So I don't think they'll get rid of him, whatever happens.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
Right, that wraps us up for the Ravens. Misspelled there. Let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of excitement around the Cincinnati Bengals. Rightly so. They finished 9-8 last year for fourth in the AFC North. Again, we've mentioned it a few times. All four teams in that division had a winning record. They missed out on the playoffs after a conference championship and a Super Bowl appearance previous 2 years. Joe Burrow carried a calf injury in training camp, led to a shaky start. But just as they burrowed in good form, a wrist injury in week 11 and ended Joe's season. You don't make these easy to read, Joe. Jake Browning came in, performed above expectations, but fell short when it mattered. Defense didn't earn their stripes as they took a giant step back on the previous years. Disruption, I think, I'll sum up the Bengals year. Just disruption all throughout, through training camp, through Burrow carry, Burrow not being fit, clearly the first couple of weeks struggling. Just kind of getting into a groove and then bang, killer, that wrist injury, done. And while Jake Browning gave his finest effort, it just wasn't enough, and they were never able to really get in the mix to get one of those wild card spots. What I suppose is a bit around, we've been here with Joe Burrow now. He had obviously a horrific injury in 2020 during his rookie season. Injuries, it feels like, going into each of the camps and preseason injuries, the previous years, and then injury derails his season again in 2023. Have the Bengals done enough to have a contingency, or can you not have that contingency when you've got someone as good as Joe Burrow?
I mean, whether you can or you can't, I don't think they really have. I'm not sure if I hold that against them, really, though. Like, I think it's tough to have a really good backup when you've got a really good elite starting quarterback, because you're only there as a pure backup. You're not going to be getting reps. You're not going to be getting starting time. It is Joe Burrow's ship. Jay Browning, I think, was fine in his fill-in, but I think that's what you're going to get as a backup on these elite teams. It is just someone who's happy to be a pure backup.
And it did win 3 in a row and gone to 8-6 with 3 games to go. So they're still in the mix, and suddenly just out of nowhere. So you got to give the Bengals and Zach Taylor the credit how they managed to have that record. I think it's just frustrating because when Burrows plays, they're a whole different team. I don't think it doesn't matter how bad the rest of the team is, they're going to compete and they're going to be there right at the end. I think what you said, Paul, was right. I think frustrating is another word as well, because it's just another season lost, and also just how it all went about. I think it was a bit weird how he went out in week 11 when he came to the game with the injury, but no one knew, and all that kind of weird going on. I know Paul wasn't too happy with his fourfold not coming in because the Bengals have been a bit sneaky there. But yeah, I think I was the most disappointed in the defense when I was looking at the stats before this. They slipped down quite a long way. And when they got to the Super Bowl, especially in the playoffs, it was the defense that carried in. It wasn't really Burrow's in them performances. So them taking a step back, and they feel like a cheap organization where they're happy to let players go and not pay big bucks for players and just get them when they're flame out somewhere else. It's it's worrying going into this year.
Yeah, you're right that with that defense, it was only the Washington Commanders who gave up more yards per game defensively than the Cincinnati Bengals last year. It's their 31st ranked defense, just ain't going to cut it. And if you felt, if they would have been, 20th, that might translate into another couple of wins. So, yeah, rough one for the Bengals, but it feels like they're right there. They were so close in, again, beat by the Chiefs in the conference championship game, lost a close Super Bowl to the Rams. It feels like they're right there at the minute to do it. And yeah, we'll talk about number 9, I'm sure. Let's move on and have a chat around the off-season headlines. Hairlines, maybe, I suppose, for Joe Burrow. Burrow is back healthy and hoping for his first full pre-season. Jamar chasing a new contract while Higgins dotted the I's and crossed the T's on a franchise tag. I practiced that one before recording, Joe, to make sure I nailed that one. Zach Tomas over the loss of Mixon and Boyd. Land of the Giants. The Bengals have a type on the O-line, but can they keep Joe Cool hot all season long? Did a good job with those ones and stumbled my way through that. Joe Burrow back. Let's just quickly talk about it in a bit more detail. Joe Burrow's back. We'll see you later on in the show, but I'm all over Joe Burrow. I think he's going to have a huge, huge season in 2024. Has the T. Higgins stuff, was that affect, do you think, any sort of relationship, would that cause any issues with the wide receivers, or do you feel that Joe Burrow might focus on T. Higgins a little bit more, or do we think it's just, Burrow will just do what he needs to do and ball out for the Bengals like we've seen when he has been fit?
Yeah, I don't see it impacting his decision-making or anything like that. I think, T. Higgins is in the building, he's good to go, and I think that's about the most of it, truthfully. I think that, I don't think he's going to specifically target him because he's trying to get a big nude contract next year. I think between Chase and Higgins, whoever's open will be the one getting the ball, or whoever's most open will be the one getting the ball. I do find it interesting, all these off-season headlines are all offense. We just talked about the defense being such a huge weak point at the end of all through last season, really. And there's not much in the way of improvement coming in certainly the headline pieces.
I think we talked about a lot at the start of last season that they lost the safeties.
Yep.
And they've got 2 in.
Yep.
One back and one in.
Back, yeah. Gino and Von Bell.
Von Bell, yeah. And that I felt was a big. And it's different when Burrow goes, that changes the dynamic, doesn't it? In terms of how well the offense keeps the ball, things like that. But in terms of, I think that was a big point. They just kind of didn't really have anybody to replace the safeties that they lost. Now they've got somebody who's very familiar with the system and back in, and they've got, Stone was a turnover machine, wasn't he, for the Ravens? Opportunity there to kind of fortify that back, and hopefully not too much damage has been done. This whole line is interesting. Maybe let's have a chat about it because it's key. We saw Burrow go down in his year 1, kind of not being protected. He was getting beat up every week on that whole line.
Yeah,
feels like they've tried a few things, the Bengals, that just haven't quite worked out. Whether that be injury, loss of form. Trent Brown's in. They got Cody Ford back in. Do we think they've done enough with the free agency and potentially the draft to address that issue? Because you've got to keep Joe Burrow upright and you've got to stop him taking the hits he's been taking.
Yeah, I think sorry, you go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, I think they've tried. I think I always say in free agency, if a tackle's out there, there's usually a reason. There's usually a reason why he's not being signed to a multi-million-dollar contract by the team. Is that if you've got a good left tackle guard, we've seen it by the Lions, 49ers, the Cowboys, all of them. If they have that player in the building, they'll pay him whatever. So I think it's always tricky to try and constantly go through free agency expecting that offensive lineman to suddenly just improve his form and change this around. Obviously, the draft of Mims, I mentioned these kind of type, they're all line. I think all of them above like 6'7", 6'8". So they're all big guys. It's just, can they actually, improve them? Can they actually get these people from the draft and make them 10, 12-year starters? I think that's where they need to work on. And is it the coaching? Is it the players they're bringing in? I think that's a big question they need to ask themselves, because it's not just a 1-year thing. It's a continual year where, there's a reason why Joe Burrow keeps getting injured every year.
Yeah, Jonah Williams a big loss as well, I think, and we know that relationship had soured. Certainly last year. So a big loss to lose him, and then you've got multiple people to replace. Let's have a look then, just a bit more detail about the moves for agency draft. Oh, you forgot your Joe Burrow animation. Zach Mostyn, we've mentioned Trent Brown, talked about Rankins and Geno Stoning. Key losses, Mixon, Boyd, Reader, and Jonah Williams. We've just talked about all of those. Mims, is he going to be good? Not good enough? Do we think he's going to fit in? You mentioned they've got a type. Do you think he's going to make an instant impact, or are we seeing him as more of a project for the Bengals?
I think he has to be viewed as a project until he delivers, really. I think of the big 6 at tackles in the NFL draft, I think he was always the one who needed the most projection. But if he hits, he might be let's see him over Joe Alt, truthfully, but he might be the number 2 or 3 tackle in the class. But I think it is a projection. I think having someone like Trent Brown there to steady the ship off the bat is probably helpful. I don't think he's someone you're going to be chucking in week 1 and saying he's a all-pro level tackle immediately. I think you're going to have to expect some ups and downs off week 1 onwards.
Yeah, and I know Trent Brown's he's not been training it right now, so he's certainly getting some first team snaps. But I think he'll sit behind. It sounded like they wanted Latham, who probably has a higher floor coming in, but Mims might have the higher ceiling. So you're always wary of them kind of players where it's a projection rather than, this guy is good. Similar, obviously we're going to get Joe Otway. It feels like he's a Stonewall, Hall of Famer already in the draft. So you are worried about that because it is the Bengals again. But we might see him later on because obviously injuries and everything. So he hopefully needs to hit the ground running.
Cool. I think for me, there a couple of interesting picks were the second round pick and the third round pick. Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. I think he could be a real disruptive force on the interior of the defensive line. And Jermaine Burton, I think, will fit. I think Joe Burrow will love Jermaine Burton wide out. I think he can add to that wide receiver room. Seeing Tyler Boyd go, I think Jermaine Burton can, be a positive addition to that wide receiver. And we might be back to kind of the three great wide receivers that the Bengals have had the last few years.
Yeah, he's currently listed as a wide receiver 3, so should certainly get some time. One player I'm interested in who they also brought in was Mike Gesicki from the Patriots. So he looks like he's going to be their starting tight end because Irv Smith didn't work out and he's left as well. So I think that could be an interesting tight end for Joe Burrow to have, because it feels like the Bengals have always had good tight ends, especially fantasy-wise, where it's always a good shout. So it'll be interesting to see where he is in the fantasy world.
Excellent. Right, let's have a look at the odds for the Cincinnati Bengals. Line on them, 10.5. They're kind of 10, 11 wins. I thought the line might be I thought we might have seen a 9.5 line on the Bengals. I know Burrow's back on makes a big difference, but just because kind of where they were defensively, things like that. I know they won 9 games and finished bottom of the division, but I'd be very surprised if that happened again with that division. I think it's a mix of kind of weak, kind of a weak division elsewhere. So what do you make of the 10.5 line for the Bengals?
I have them at 12-5, but again, I don't know if it's one that'll be betting the over on, just because this division, it's so tough that it's not hard to see, anywhere between 9 and 12 or 9 and 13, maybe 13's pushing it, but even 8 and 12 might be in that range of possibilities. If Burrow does miss a couple of weeks, you do obviously really worry. I do like them to make the playoffs, but again, minus 240 is just so short that it's one I'll probably just be leaving alone, truthfully.
Yeah, I think like the Ravens and the Bengals feel like the line's too high, while we'll be obviously getting to the other two teams where their line feels too low. And it feels like it's the two teams who've got the elite quarterbacks have got a bump on their line, and the other two don't. It's slightly lower, but I don't see many difference between the teams in general when you look at the overall team. So, yeah, I'm thinking 9 or 10 wins. I think it's going to be similar to last year. I think I could see all of them getting a winning record again. So he's just choosing, which two are going to get the 11s and which two are going to get the 9 or 10. So I would probably go under. I think they'll get 10 wins, but it's super close. So.
Excellent, right? And let's have a look at division plus 165. It's just behind the Ravens. Conference winners 7-1 plus 700, and Super Bowl winners at plus 1,200, 12-1. What would be a good season? What would be classed as a good season for the Cincinnati Bengals?
I think Joe Burrow makes it through the season, and you win at least one playoff game is I think minimum success for it to be a success. Obviously, the ultimate goal for everybody is win the Super Bowl, win the title games, but again, it's just AFC is so top loaded that it's hard to say. If you win wild card round and lose to the Chiefs or lose to the Bills, like that's some ultimate failure, which I don't think you can really say, because I don't think 1 to 22 offense defense. I don't think they're as good as the Chiefs. So I can't really beat them up for not beating them when it matters most. So I think if you win a playoff game, I think you'd call it a successful season, just not ultimate success.
I think the problem with the Bengals have got, I think a few teams they've now paid Burrows and they're going to be paying Chase. Yeah. So obviously they can't stack a team like they could have done when he was on his rookie contract. Obviously you can get a good team out with the Chiefs done and build a defense through, great coaching and hitting on your draft picks. So I think similar to Bayern, but also that the defense gets back to where it was and maybe seeing some young players, looking like stars or future stars. I think that's where they got to go to, because they're not going to be able to, and they never have splashed in free agency to get these big players to, take them over the hill. So I think certainly the defense improving and just that they're competing to get to the Super Bowl. I think that would be a success. I think I have a slight worry that, obviously there's the worry about Burrows, but are they just going to be a middling kind of team? And I think that's the worst outcome for this Bengals team, because what can you change? I think that's the issue they might have.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. That wraps up the Cincinnati Bengals. We're on to our third team in the AFC North. We're going to be taking a look at the Cleveland Browns, and we've got a very special guest joining us. So let's jump over and go check out the Browns. On to the third team in our AFC North preview. You've just heard mine, Byron, and Joe's thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. We're joined by a special guest to preview the Cleveland Browns. We've got Oliver, part of the Asleep at Work network, Hurdle and Hurdle the Line. At UK Browns NFL is his handle. You can go follow him on Twitter and I'm sure the other socials as well. Oliver, welcome to Good Teams and Great Teams Cover. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Pleasure always to talk NFL with fellow UK fans.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's good to meet. Like I say, we know a few Browns guys across the pond, so it's good to kind of start a relationship with the guys.
Quite a strong global following, the Browns, I think. So I think we're one of the better followed teams, overseas. So not surprised to hear.
Good stuff. So we just mentioned at UK Browns NFL is your handle. You're also part of the Hurdle Line podcast. We met Fletch for the first time when we did our NFC North preview last week. What have you got going on at Hurdle the Line at the minute, and where can we catch it and follow it?
Yeah, so loads going on. Obviously, everything we've started early in the off season, made it through. We covered everything that's kind of happened over the off season, and now we're just kind of gearing up, I suppose, as we all are for the season. getting everything kind of in place and ready, and kind of getting ourselves excited and getting the listeners hopefully excited as well. I also do another podcast with myself and another person from Herd of the Line, Tom, which is Midnight Sports, which is recently just released their first few segments as well. So you can follow that at Midnight Sports Podcast on YouTube, or just _ Midnight Sports on the socials in terms of Instagram and Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Herd of the Line is Herd of the Line on Twitter and all the socials. But we tend to use the AAW network socials a bit more frequently. So I encourage you to follow that one, if any of them. But yeah, that's where you can find all the kind of content and podcast stuff that I'm doing at the minute. And as you mentioned, UK Browns NFL has kind of been synonymous with my social handle now. So that's my handle for everything. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever social it is. Luckily, no one had come up with the UK Browns NFL name on any of the platforms, so I managed to get it for all of them. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Excellent, good stuff. The Midnight Sports, is that with Tom Kraft? Is it?
That's with Tom Kraft.
We've
Yeah,
had
from
Tom on
Crafty
before.
Sports.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had Tom on for our Super Bowl preview.
It's that yin yang of someone that's used to success and someone that's not really used to success. So it's quite a good blend of conversation.
Excellent. Well, that's a good segue to start getting into talking about the Cleveland Browns, because it was one of the few years where it was a successful season for the Cleveland Browns 2023. Let's have a quick look over, I suppose, just some quick headlines from the season. Finished 11-6, second in the AFC North, good enough for 5th seed in the AFC playoffs. Had 5 starting quarterbacks, which I think was the first for a very long time. I think first since 1987, I think that had happened. Let's name them all. Deshaun Watson, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, PJ Walker, Joe Flacco, and Jeff Driscoll.
Yeah, I tend not to count the Jeff Driscoll one, as obviously he was just coming in to alleviate Flacco for rest on the last game of the season with the playoffs. Pretty much, they pretty much knew where they were. But technically, yes, it was 5.
Yes, 5 starting quarterbacks, and yeah. God, look, Jeff Driscoll, show Jeff Driscoll some love as well. But yeah, 5, including, so it was an up and down and injured Watson to kind of start with, and then Joe Flacco coming in off the sofa to save the day. Helped by defense that loved their home comforts. It's crazy the split. Me and Byron were just talking about it before we started recording there. The split of kind of giving up just short of 14 points at home, but just short of 30 points on the road. And it was award season in Cleveland with Defensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year. It was a wild ride.
Assistant Coach of the Year as well.
And Assistant Coach of the Year as well, yes. And it was a wild ride that ended in a 45-14 loss in the wild card round at the Houston Texans. How would you sum up, just in a few words, Oliver, how would you sum up how the 2023 season was for the Browns?
Crazy, unpredictable, a roller coaster of emotions. Going into the season with high expectations. Starting the season fairly well. Then obviously, I say fairly well, Jack Conklin got injured on the first game of the season. Second game of the season, obviously Nick Chubb goes down, best player on offense. Injuries started stacking up, but the team was winning games. And then obviously with Watson injury, him out for the season, you kind of, at that point, you're tempted to kind of just bail ship and, kind of just look to next season. But then we kind of went on that run. And so, like I said, it was a roller coaster of emotions, almost a fairy tale run in the end when they were able to, make the playoffs, go 11-6 with 26% of their salary cap on injured reserve. Like you mentioned, 5 different quarterbacks. I mean, started that playoff game and pretty much most of the second half of the season with 2 backup tackles, missing key players on defense. There was just so many injuries. Just a crazy season in terms of injuries and luck in terms of that or that there of it. But yeah, so just a crazy season. Obviously, it was good to make the playoffs. Obviously, something that the Browns aren't too used to in the last 20 years. Making the playoffs isn't a norm for us. So to make the playoffs was a really cool moment. To seal the playoffs at home on that Thursday night game against the Jets was really cool. But then obviously, as we've mentioned, the ending with the wildcard loss, which, yes, hurts, but I think hindsight 2020, now I've had a few months to look back on it, and I've kind of compartmentalized all the injuries and all the things that led up to it. I can look on the season with a bit more of a lighter sense than be too negative and worked up about, how it ended.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, rightfully, I think Kevin Stefanski, in the face of all that, was rightfully coach of the year. Incredible job kind of guiding the team through that. Almost every week, it seemed a significant injury took place, as well as kind of having to manage that Deshaun Watson situation, not particularly playing as well as expected, or the trade and the contract certainly suggests he should be playing, and then the injury and being able to kind of get Flacco in and just some magic, squeeze that last bit of magic maybe out of Joe Flacco, for that run. With kind of where they are, what kind of your expectations, first of all? Let's just start there. Kind of what's your expectation going into 2024 with the Browns?
So as I alluded to earlier, my expectations last season were high. If anything, they're higher in terms of, I think, this is the best roster that the Browns have had in my lifetime. I don't think that's, can be argued against. The only question, as you kind of alluded to with Watson, is the quarterback position. But I just feel like, as they proved last year, with being able to win 11 games with the absolute, kind of carousel of quarterbacks that they went through, kind of proves that, the quarterback, similar to the San Francisco and, these kind of teams, the quarterback doesn't have to be the best player if your skill positions and your other positions are that talented and that good. So my expectations for Watson, while they're not, incredibly high, they're also not low. I'm one of these people that don't get me wrong, I'm not clinging on for him to, return to 2019 form and be a top 5 quarterback. That's kind of out my expectations, but I do think that he can achieve at least a above average to, relatively good level if he can, get it right and get in the right situation this year. So if he can give the Browns above to good quarterback play, I think there's no reason why they shouldn't challenge and be a contender within the AFC. I think the defense is arguably the best defense in the NFL. You look at last season, they led the league in total yards on defense. They were the best passing defense in the league, only allowing, I think, 164 passing yards a game. I think the defense is that good that, as I alluded to, I think if they can get, not Pro Bowl level, but near in Pro Bowl level to a, top 15 to top 16 level quarterback play from Watson, I think there's no reason, as I alluded to, with the skill position, talent, how good I think the defense is, why they shouldn't be a contender to at least, make the AFC Championship game and if not make the Super Bowl.
Excellent. Let's have a look then at the off-season headlines, and Joe's got a little question for you as well. I'll ask while he's controlling things in the background. Watson's participating pre-season. He's set to start. The $230 million question is: will we ever see the old Deshaun and have a happy ending? Jesus, Joe. We've got a new OC in Ken Dorsey. Will his Kennedy improve the offense? Jerry Jeudy's in at wide receiver 2 from a trade, and there's positive news about Nick Chubb's recovery, and that's. Joe writes all these. I do apologise. That's Amore for Cooper with contract restructure. Sorry, Joe, if I butchered that last one. One question from Joe, Oliver, is if Watson fails this year, is that it? That's kind of 2 full years he's had at it, and then
I think so. I think if he doesn't show you enough this season that you're confident that he's your quarterback going forward, I think you start putting the pieces in place to move on from him. He will have 1 year left on his deal at this point, or 2 years. I can't quite remember now, but where he is at the contract line. So I think I think the pieces will start putting into place. We obviously, it's our first year within 3 years that we have a first round pick. Whether or not that pick gets used on a quarterback, we'll have to wait and see on Watson's play this year. But to answer your question, I think, and especially, the way you phrased it, if he is bad and, is glaringly bad and is a reason why he's holding the team back and the reason why the team is not being as successful as they can be, then I do think they will plan to move on from him.
Yeah, I think these runs like it's 3 full years left on it, I suppose, and a void year in 27.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult situation, isn't it? And I suppose that's the risk if you go all in and it doesn't work out, but that's yet to come. Who knows? He could start turning it around in 2024. From an offense perspective, we'll stick there kind of with the new weapons that have come in and Ken Dorsey and his OC. What differences are you expecting to see from the Browns offensively?
So I don't think it's going to be too drastic. I think some people are expecting it to be a completely, and I say some people, I mean within the Browns fandom and fandom space, are expecting to be a completely new offense, and they're going to go completely just throwing it downfield every play. But I think obviously bringing in Ken Dorsey, it's now been announced that he won't be calling plays. Kevin Stefanski will still be calling plays. So I don't think it's going to be a matter of the entire offense changing. I think it will it's more a case of you're going to see different concepts and more updated concepts, and within the scheme more so than a completely different scheme, altogether. I think they will obviously look to use the new talent they've brought in. Obviously, Judy, Moore, and Cooper, in my opinion, is a pretty solid and to decent wide receiver core. Murray Cooper, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league, in my opinion. So yes, I think the plan is to change the offense to some extent, but I think they're still going to continue. I mean, Kevin Stefanski has been successful in doing what he does, but he's also, he's really good at. And I think you look at what they did this year with firing Van Pelt, quite a lot of the offensive staff, and bringing in not just Dorsey, but quite a few other guys, and particularly some guys from college. He's a keen learner, and he's keen to have other smart people around him to update his ideas, and he never wants to get stale within his own ideas. So as I alluded to, I don't think it's going to be an entirely different offensive scheme, but obviously with Watson, obviously if he can play to a standard that he expects of himself and that the Browns organization expect of himself, then obviously, you are going to see a more vertical attack than you have seen in the last 2 years when, they played with more limited quarterbacks than that.
Excellent. Byron, just a quick one. Do you expect this offense to shoulder maybe more of the load than kind of that it has been doing with how strong the defense has been?
Yeah, I mean, that's... Oh, sorry. I thought you...
Sorry.
So I was going to say, yeah, maybe a little, but I mean, I share Oliver's optimism, really. I think this is an incredibly strong team. I'm not sure if I have the Browns or the Bengals winning the division, but I have them top 2, certainly. They're just so well-rounded. And I think I'm one of the rare people who I don't think Deshaun Watson was as bad as people think he was last year. I don't think he was a standout by any means. But I don't think he's buried in the water or dead in the water again, certainly. I think the offense will probably be better than it, maybe not better than it was last year, because that's asking a lot, because they ran so many plays last year. I think they might have actually they ran with the most plays in the league last year, but they might have also run the most plays ever. I've not actually seen that reported. I've seen someone mention it on Twitter as a possibility, and I've not seen anyone dispute it. So I think they're maybe more efficient than, more total, I guess. But yeah, I think the sky's kind of the ceiling, or the ceiling's kind of the sky for this Browns team, including the offense. I don't think there's much to be concerned about, unless again you get 30% of your team on IR again, or 30% of your salary cap, which it'll hinder anybody, obviously. But yeah, I think they're incredibly well set. And one of the things that it's not an off-season headline, I don't know if it'll be on our moves even, but like just getting Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
Oh no, have we just lost Byron? Has he just dropped out?
I heard it mention Mike Vrabel, obviously the acquisition of Mike
Yeah.
Vrabel this offseason, which came to a shock to every Browns fan. I think it came to a shock with everyone in the organisation that Brian that he was willing to come and take this job after obviously getting fired by the Titans, and was willing to come in as a kind of assistant role is quite big. But just to allude to the question you said about the offense with last season, I think the biggest thing is the turnovers. They led the league last year in turnovers, which is a testament to how good that defense was. I mean, you look at the numbers the defense put up, despite being put in bad situations almost every game, constantly, multiple times. When you look at the turnovers that the offense were giving up, so as your co-host alluded to, I think the sky is the limit for the offense, and it's more of a matter of being more efficient. I think we saw last year when Flacco came in, you saw what you can do with guys like Njoku when you fully give him, target him within the offense, and obviously people like Amari Cooper. If Deshaun can do that to a similar level, then I agree that the sky is the limit. It's just a matter of being more efficient, as he said, and really reducing those turnovers down.
Yeah, I think we'd seen, like I said, he's led the league with 37 turnovers, 3 ahead of the Vikings. But yeah, when you look at kind of the difference, the Texans 14 led the league, so it's a huge difference between kind of top and bottom there. And like even despite that, defense been putting in bad situations because of the offensive carelessness, I guess, that they were still able to kind of produce, which was great. Byron was talking about Vrabel as kind of a consultant before. You froze up there, Byron.
Yeah, I just think, we all went from, why didn't the Titans trade him for something, to suddenly can't get a head coaching job. And now, you mentioned earlier, Oliver, like Stefanski likes to be surrounded by smart people. Well, I think that's a real, there's no chance Stefanski's on any kind of hot seat or anything like that. But it just shows confidence in yourself. I think a lot of head coaches wouldn't be happy bringing someone like Mike Vrabel in, who, will be looking for a head coaching job again.
Yeah.
And, he had a power struggle in Tennessee. But I think that shows a lot of belief in himself to be like, no, I just want the best people here. I think it's a no-fail move. I just think it's a real smart move. If you can get someone like that in the building who knows football, who knows coaching, he's had personnel experience, I just think only good things for the Browns on that front.
And I'm actually surprised how involved he has been. I mean, you see the images and the videos from training camp. He's on the field running sprints with the players.
Yeah,
he's doing the press conferences now as well. I mean, it is quite a surreal sight to see Vrabel in a Browns with a Browns badge on his jacket, on his quarter zip. But yeah, as everything you said, it's a great move for the Browns.
Yeah, I listened to he was on Pardon My Take a couple of weeks ago, and Tom was talking about kind of how it all came about, which was really interesting. And yeah, absolutely tap into it. He's been a pretty successful coach there. Surround yourself with good people. Why not tap into it, see what you can get? Cool. Well, let's talk about the moves then. We've kind of mentioned a few of them already, but let's talk about the free agent key additions and losses in the draft. Jerry Jeudy, the trade-in from the Broncos. James Winston, it's one. I don't know if they're better set up, so if they have to move kind of mid-season away from Deshaun, it's not quite the SOS call. Flacco, I'm personally a huge fan of James Winston, so I'm not wanting Deshaun Watson to fail. I don't want to wish that on somebody. It has terrible that he gets pulled out, but I would just love to see James Winston play because he's just so entertaining. Quentin Jefferson on the D-line and Jordan Hicks. Some key losses, obviously Flacco's not returned, Kareem Hunt, Anthony Walker, and Jordan Elliott. Who kind of from the free agency group or free agency class is exciting you most, and who do you think is going to make the biggest difference?
I probably would say Jerry Jeudy. I just think he is a talent waiting to be unlocked to an extent. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver, but I do think his talent and his ability wasn't quite unlocked in Denver, and I think it's something that can be unlocked at the Browns. And if it is, I think that just makes the Browns so much more deadly on offense, because I think something the last few years, I mean, even with Coop being as productive as he has been, we've struggled to have that second option. And obviously when push comes to shove in games that matter and playoff games, and teams blanket Coop and, put a lot more focus onto him because they know who's the other guy that's going to step up. So I think if he can be that person that can step up, that would be massive for the offense. I think the other guys as well. I think Jordan Hicks is a really good acquisition, someone that can come in, almost mentor JOK in a way. Someone I think, as I alluded to with Jerry Jeudy, in terms of being a talent waiting to be unlocked. I think it's that on steroids. I think JOK can be one of the best at his position. You look at last season, he led all linebackers, might have even led all players in tackles for loss, with over 20 tackles for loss. Kind of had his breakout season last year. So I think Jordan Hicks will be a really good acquisition to kind of have next to him and be a mentor for him over the next 2 years. Quentin Jefferson, I think, is an underrated pickup. I mean, you look at the last few years, especially last year, I think he had 6 sacks with the Jets. in the last 3 years, I think he hasn't had any, less than 4 or 5 sacks in each year. He's quite productive as a pass rusher, kind of rotational piece on that D line. Something that the Browns love, obviously, with Jim Schwartz's scheme. Pass rush is a premium. So to bring in someone that has, is a proven, proven production at that is always a good thing. Just to allude to Jameis Winston, I suppose, as you said, I mean, I think I'm not entirely sure if it's more of a detriment on Deshaun Watson as it is a detriment on Dorian Thompson-Robinson in terms of they don't have faith in him. They wanted clearly they spent money on a backup quarterback, so they clearly didn't trust him, and were in a situation where they felt like they wanted someone they were more comfortable with in case Watson, as we've seen the last 2 years, wasn't able to be on the field for the full season. So yeah, I'd say that's probably out of the guys that obviously that we brought in so far. You never know, might bring in one of the old guys still left on their couches for training camp ends. But no, that out of the ones brought in so far, yeah.
Plenty of movement, no doubt there will be as training camps go and more injuries happen. DTR's one that I'm kind of a little bit sad for. I love watching him for UCLA, and then we kind of thought, he was that the quarterback in preseason that was like, maybe if he gets in, he could. And then he just looked a bit lost, didn't he? But I don't know. Hopefully they keep him around and give him a practice squad or whatever. And maybe he gets kind of a shot at a backup job, because I love watching DTR as well. I loved him at UCLA as well. It was great.
Yeah, he's a good dude as well. Good dude.
Nice. Let's have a look at the draft then. Again, you mentioned the last of the years without the first round pick from the Deshaun Watson trade. What do you make of the draft class? And again, kind of who are the ones, or who's the guy that's going to make the instant impact from this rookie class for the Browns?
I mean, it's not a fancy luxurious draft. It's not one of the drafts that's going to get the A stars on all of the ESPN reports after the draft that come out. Because they didn't have a first round pick, as you said. They didn't come away with one of these kind of really popular players, so it's kind of viewed as goes under the radar, and it's not seen as being a good draft almost. But I think in terms of when you look at where they were going into the draft, it's probably the first draft, or in the last 2 years, the first drafts where they've been drafted not for actual starters and actual needs that they need on the roster now. They've just been drafting purely best player available and trying to fill depth pieces hopefully down the line. I was actually surprised that they made the later round picks that they did. I thought because of that they might look to trade some of those picks. They ended up making those picks. The players that I think, obviously Michael Hall, I think he has the clear the quickest path to that starting rotation. I think that's a Jim Schwartz pick. He's someone that Jim Schwartz is, it's the perfect player to play that kind of free tech role in that defensive line. He's kind of viewed as a little bit undersized. I think 6 foot, just over 6'2" and 290 pounds. But what he lacks in size, he makes up with quickness and burst. He's an absolute bullet off the line for his size. And he's someone that I can see this season actually having a role within that defensive line rotation. I think everyone else on that in the draft, you're looking at potential depth pieces. Zach Zinter, I think, is a good pick. I think if he didn't have his leg injury, obviously on the last game of that Michigan season, which coincidentally was against Ohio State, and it was actually Michael Hall who fell on his leg, which caused the injury, and he's now his teammate back playing in Ohio. So. But I do think that's a good pick. I think he's a player, a prospect that has quite a good, strong pedigree. He was a leader in arguably one of the best offensive lines in college football over the last few years. Won a national championship, one of the best teams in college football, and he was, arguably one of the best offensive linemen on that line. So I think that's a good pick. That's more to the future. You look at the next kind of few years down the line. Wyatt Teller's contract is getting a little bit expensive. Joe Bitonio is not getting any younger. That's what that pick is for. I think is the hope is there that he is going to be the long-term starter at that guard position going forward. And if he is that's a great pick, especially in the third round. Just to kind of, I won't go into the later guys too much because I think Jawan Briggs is going to be the practice squad. I think it'll be very hard for him to make the roster. Miles Harden, I think, could maybe be a sneaky end of the roster guy. He's a good little physical corner, someone that something that the Browns do cover at the position. And Andrew Berry's just been so good at drafting corners the last few years that who knows, he might pop and show something in preseason. Nathaniel Watson obviously was SEC Defensive Player of the Year last season, but he lacks pretty much every athletic profile that you would want as an NFL player. That's why he obviously fell in the draft. But I think because of the kind of lack of investment they put in the linebacker position, that's quite a thin room. So there's maybe a chance he can make the roster. But I think he's probably, again, like Briggs, more looking at the practice squad. And then Jamari Thrash, I think, will make the roster as the sixth wide receiver, purely because of his ability to get open in scrambled drills. You look at his tape, I think what kind of shoots out the most at you is ability to stay active on plays and get open. He seems to have a knack of having that chemistry with his quarterback, and if he can develop that with Watson in camp and in preseason, then there's definitely a roster spot for him. So, I mean, going into a draft where you didn't have a first pick, you weren't picking until round 54. If you can come away from that with two potential future starters and one or two rotational players, it's a great draft. It's a good draft. There's no complaints.
The Nathaniel Watson one's interesting for me, and I know you mentioned kind of what he lacks in the athletic profile, athleticism side of things. Still in the SEC, which is by far and away the top, conference in college football. He was just short of 140 tackles and 10 sacks last year from linebacker position.
Yep.
There is something for he knows where the ball is sort of piece.
And he's a very secure tackler as well. He had some of the lowest missed tackle rates in the SEC. He seems to be a very, very secure tackler. So yeah, just to further your points, I do agree, and he's someone that I am intrigued by, and think he could. There is a spot on the roster for him.
Yeah, could end up being great value kind of there at pick 206 from Mississippi State. Sixth rounder. Cool. Well, let's have a quick look at the lines and the odds for the Browns. Let's see what we think for 2024. The line's an interesting one. This is an 11-win team from 2023. Yet the line is over under 8.5. So 8 or 9 wins is where Vegas seems to have them. Oliver, you're smiling there. Do you think the Browns are being disrespected by Vegas here in terms of the line?
I think they're massively being disrespected, and I can understand. Don't get me wrong, I understand the logic where all of these, especially the betting sites and, even just any of the other sites are coming from. I understand that the quarterback's the most important position. There's question marks about the quarterback. That's kind of where they go with it. If you're not sure the quarterback's going to be good, that doesn't equate to more wins. But I just think this roster is just way too talented for the over-under to be 8.5. And again, I get they're in a tough division, best division in the NFL. AFC is stacked, but I just think 8.5 for, like you said, a team that went 11-6 last season with 5 different quarterbacks, 26% of their salary cap on injured reserve, to put their win total at 8.5, coming back this season with pretty much everyone healthy. Obviously, there's a slight question mark on whether Nick Chubb will be ready to start the season, but yeah, I think that's slightly ludicrous, and I would encourage people, if they're going to, then to take the over.
Yeah, over at minus 135, so just favoured to kind of get to 9, under plus 105, so just better than even money. Byron, where you at? You've done your playthrough. Where you at with the Browns?
Yeah, comfortably over. I think I'm at 12-5, so obviously have them making the playoffs, obviously have them going over. I think I'd take them over at 10.5 as well. I obviously have them at 12, but I kind of struggle with, again, how the line is at 8.5. I know it is a tough division, like Oliver's saying, but yeah, I have them comfortably over that number.
My playthrough, I've got them at 9 and 8. Weird, because we've talked about this, like how, I don't think it could happen again. When I had my playthrough the other week, I got all 4 teams winning records again. Yeah. I'll play through that before the season, but I don't think that will happen. I don't think, 9 wins. I don't know if that feels right. It's interesting. It does hinge on Watson. It really, really does for me. I'm not sure a team could overcome what they overcame again last year and turn that into a successful season. I know it's not saying 11 wins here, but even 9 wins. If all that happened again, I'd struggle to see them getting to 9 wins. But yeah, surely they won't have that much bad luck again. but we've seen some teams just do it, don't they? Typically, we see it with the Chargers a lot, where they will just get mass amounts of injuries every single year. Seen it with the Titans over the last couple of years of kind of mass injuries, and is it that one thing that maybe it's just a one-off, or will it stick around? But the schedule's okay, isn't it? A lot, especially the NFC teams are playing.
It's meant to be the hardest schedule. I think it's dubbed as the hardest schedule we have.
But when you look at it,
completely agree. I mean, and I think that's a silly thing to do anyway. You're basing it on last season's records. It's a new year. You look at the NFL, the parity differences, and every single year is so massive that I think it's kind of silly to look at last season's record as a measurement for that.
Yeah, you play the Browns play the NFC East by week 6.
Yeah.
Kick off Cowboys, which should hopefully be a tough game. Me and Barry are both Cowboys fans, so hopefully that will be a tough game for the Browns. But the Giants, you'd like to think the Browns will be too strong for the Commanders early in the season. They played the Saints, is the 5th NFC game, so you'd sort of think again they should probably have too much for the Saints as well. So while it's tough for the AFC, it's tough. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I'm kind of right on that line of, I think maybe 9, possibly 10 wins, but we'll see. Let's have a look then the odds to win the division, make the playoffs, all that jazz. Oh, and if you are interested in over 9.5 wins, if you want to hedge it, it's plus 140. So get a little bit better odds on over 9.5 wins if you think they can get to double digits. Division winners plus 550, so 11-2 to win the division. Conference winners plus 2,200, 22-1. Super Bowl winner 40-1, plus 4,000. Oliver, what would be a successful season for you for the Cleveland Browns?
Successful season will be proving that you can contend in the AFC, whether that's losing a close AFC Championship game, whether that's losing there's certain obviously semantics that go into it. But if you get blown out in the AFC Championship game, you might not think. You look at the Titans a few years ago; no one really thought they were actually a contender the season afterwards, because they made the AFC Championship game the season prior. So for me, I think make at least. I think that get it. The divisional round is the floor for me. I expect them to at least win a playoff game. And I think, like I said, I want them to show that they can contend within the AFC. And that if maybe that's because a few plays didn't go their way, but that's why they lost that game. And that be the reason. But so I think it's just show that you can be a true contender in the AFC. And obviously, my that's my expectation. But my hope is obviously Super Bowl. My hope is obviously first division title in my lifetime. The Houston Oilers have won a division title more recently than the Browns, and everyone knows that they haven't been a team for quite a while. So, it's obviously my hopes are a bit different to the expectations. But I still expect. My expectations are very, very high for the team, and the highest they've ever been in my fandom. So that's where I'm at with it.
Excellent. I'd love the Browns. Give me a Browns Lions Super Bowl. I'd love to see that. That'd be good.
Yeah.
If my team
football deserves it. I think football deserves that.
That would be an ace one. Oliver, that brings us to the end of our look at the Cleveland Browns. Just give us a reminder again, where can we catch Hurdle the Line and Midnight Sports?
Yep, so you can catch Hurdle the Line. It's just at Hurdle the Line on all the socials, but we tend to post more on just at AAW Network. You can find Midnight Sports, that's Midnight Sports Podcast on Spotify and on YouTube, or you can find us on the socials for that. That's _ Midnight Sports, because as I alluded to earlier, I've been lucky with some of the socials, but unfortunately someone took the direct one for that one. And then you can just find my personal Browns kind of fan account where I kind of, just post everything Browns. That's at UK Browns fan. At UK Browns NFL. That was my old one. And you can find me on all the socials at that handle. And that just luckily, as I said, I didn't get it for that one, but for those I did. So that's my handles for all the socials for my personal accounts.
Excellent. Make sure everyone go give Oliver a follow, Hurdle the Line a follow, and of course the Midnight Sports Podcast a follow as well. Thanks for joining us, Oliver. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
We're going to move on. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers next. We've got returning guest Simon Winstanley from the UK Steelers podcast to finish off. talking about the teams in the NFC North, and finish off by talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cheers, Oliver. We'll see you soon, buddy.
I'm glad you left them to last, as they'll be this season.
Time to look at our fourth team in the AFC North. We've just covered off the Cleveland Browns. We're now moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And helping us out, previewing the Pittsburgh Steelers for 2024, we've got a returning guest and a friendly face. It's a Good Teams Win Great Teams cover. We're joined again by Simon Winstanley from the UK Steelers podcast. Simon, thanks for joining us. We saw you last during the draft at about 4:00 in the morning. It was a bit crazy. Yeah. But you joined us for our second annual NFL Draft Bonanza, so we appreciate you for that. But you're back for your preview of the Steelers. First of all, how's it going and how are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Good to be here again for, what must be the third or fourth time probably now. Appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, glad to be here. Good to see you guys doing well. You showed me a little preview of what we've got to talk about today, and I like that you've done my work for me, Paul, so appreciate it.
We like to make things easy. We do. We like to make things easy for our guests.
Let's be fair. Joe's done the work for all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
I was trying to make him look good there.
Yeah. Shout out Joe again, doing the hard work for the presentation that you see on screen if you're watching on YouTube. Or you hear us talk through on Spotify. Speaking of our Spotify, let's speak of the UK Steelers podcast. Simon, you've been obviously you're a part of that. What have you guys got coming up as we kind of hit the training camp portion of the summer, and where can we find it and listen to it?
Yeah, sure. We've just crossed 250 episodes over on the UK Steelers podcast. Just winding up kind of the fifth season, what we call season 5. So heading into season 6 now. Still not missed a week in all those years since before COVID. So we're still rocking and rolling. So yeah, you can still find the usual cast of characters and some new faces over there with the usual touch of mirth. And we've also made, I'm sure you guys have been keeping up with the Around the NFL podcast and the demise of that show, sadly, in recent months. And we've spoke a lot on that. And we have made the perhaps unofficial claim to kind of like take some of those bits and just, continue to breed them and envelop them as like kind of an honorary future way of honoring that podcast. So if you like that kind of show and you like the Steelers, head over there, UK Steelers podcast at UK Steelers Pod on Twitter. Find it all the usual places, Spotify, as you said.
And if there's any, copyright claims come in, just say, well, I have to heed the call,
Right. Well, exactly. Yeah.
Can't blame me.
It's what the boys would have wanted. I'm sorry, Shadowy League figures. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. What a great tribute. And congratulations on surpassing 250 episodes. That is no mean feat. I believe this is Good Teams Win Great Teams cover number 99. I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're right on there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure our next one, which will be, I think we're doing NFC South next. So that will be episode
or
1.
Draft special.
You're going to drop an NFC South? Is that the division you want to drop on there?
That's the 100th one.
Or a draft special.
Or a draft special, yes. We could do that, couldn't we? Yeah.
That's Olympic season. Idea. That is a better idea than, like so I say, as a NFC South for episode 100. Come on.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, we'll do the bonus.
We'll squeeze a draft in. Somewhere.
Everyday tasks that could be Olympic events draft, I think, is what we'll do, which will be quite fun to do. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Sounds like the kind of thing I pitch on my show, and Gav, my co-host, usually just vetoes those ideas and comes up with something much more football related.
Oh no,
I don't know if we should say the draft idea Paul had that we vetoed. I mean, I've started, so I'm obviously going to say it. But Paul wanted us to draft our favorite guests.
Oh wow, I like that. That's good.
Well, Paul, my wife's been a guest, so she has to go 101. And then after that, we're just going to offend everybody else that's given us their time and dedication.
Yeah,
and blood, sweat,
absolutely.
And tears.
Yeah, well, you could inherit, talking around the NFL, you could inherit the hit it and quit it list, right? The guests that come on once and you never get back in touch with.
There you go. Yeah. See?
Let's try that ring on the
finger.
I think
that's a great idea. I think the drafting of the guests would be interesting. And, I'm sure nobody would take any offense if they were left off the list. But,
she definitely would. She said so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like you'd have to take Cindy with the. What if Cindy didn't get to you? What if me or Joe took Cindy before you?
Wow.
Best of luck to you lads.
Right, let's crack on anyway. The Pittsburgh Steelers, that's what we're here to talk about, not future episodes of Good Teams with Great Teams cover. Yet another season where the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't have a losing record. Byron, do you want to lead the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, 2023, I'll just say another year winning record. Mike Tomlin cannot lose ever. So they finished 10-7. which is only good enough for third in the AFC North, third wildcard team. The 17th consecutive season, 500 or better under Mike Tomlin, 20 years in a row. Being 500 or better, the first team in NFL history to do so. Top 10 defense, hides the putrid offensive player with Pickett not making second-year leap, but Rudolph lit the way to 3 end-of-season wins. And then
we didn't check for Joe typos before we.
So it's a good job you didn't claim this now, Paul.
Yeah.
And then the season ended fairly inevitably. I feel like 31-17 wildcard loss at Buffalo. They were 10.5-point underdogs. I think, to be fair, we all took them as an underdog because they were playing great football at the end of the season, and it was like they can get within 10. Obviously, it wasn't to be; it was 14 in the end, and nothing to be sniffed at. A lot of teams would truthfully kill for a wild card loss at the end of the season. But yes, how do you feel? A sentence, few words. How do you think the 2023 season can be summed up?
Yeah, it's the old San Andreas meme, right? Oh, here we are. Here we go again. And it feels like it's been that way kind of since we started doing the podcast, like 5 years ago or so. And we've kind of found ourselves in this weird, you can't call it a rut because it's in some ways so successful and there's such sustained success. But what you're starting to see in a city like Pittsburgh is that, I probably said this to you, Paul, last year, is real frustration with no playoff wins and no kind of real deep success in January and February. And that, you're starting to hear that. And I think some teams around the league might hear, the Tomlin talk and some areas around Pittsburgh that like to suggest that maybe Tomlin leaving would be the best outcome. And they would see that as crazy. And I do see that as a little bit jumping the gun. But there's some people, even on my show that disagree with that. So you're in a bit of a weird kind of tumultuous time in Pittsburgh where it could go either way, and you're really starting to see a bit of a reset. And 2023, I think it was more of the same. You just saw that delay that we had with Kenny Pickett for a couple of years that just didn't quite pay off. It was a thing of necessity that kind of happened. We were speaking about this on the podcast recently about how the end of the Ben years went and how, it was clear that Ben wasn't the kind of guy who was really willing to kind of take on that guy under his wing and really develop a guy. And I think you're starting to see the Steelers pay for that now, because unlike the Packers, we didn't have a Jordan Love ready to go. We weren't lucky enough to just draft Brett Purdy, even though they would have done if we'd have been in the draft room. We'd have taken him in the 5th round. We loved the dude. Yeah. So we weren't ready, I'm afraid, and it has caused this delay. But at the same time, credit to Mike Tomlin for still pulling a winning season out of what has been some lackluster offenses. Yep. Frankly, we'll talk about it in a second, I'm sure. But with Arthur Smith coming in, it starts to feel like a bit like the government right now. Adults are back in the room. I don't want to get political, but it does feel a little bit like we're back in control and we've got someone at the helm of the offense who actually might be able to run a productive offense. So we're hoping for good things, but it's going to be a tough season.
That is a great segue. Sorry, Paul.
Just one quick question. Sorry, quick question on Kenny Pickett. Obviously, it didn't work out kind of a couple of years, but they had the best look at him that anybody could have done, any draft prospect, in terms of kind of, obviously, he was the quarterback at Pitt. Was in that building, using the facilities, being able
he knew where the toilet was, being
able to be real close to him for that entire time he was at Pitt. Did it concern you, or does it concern you kind of because of how it's not worked out on kind of the decision making or the draft process that the Steelers have, or do you think it was just kind of it just didn't fall around?
You know what? Kenny Pickett was... I don't want to, give you a cop-out answer and say, Kenny Pickett still has something in the tank and he was put in a tough situation. But, there was moments, and we always think back to that Raiders game. I don't know if you remember, it was that kind of memorial game we had, and we came back against the Raiders last minute, and it was kind of a great Kenny Pickett drive in the 4th quarter to win it.
The 22 season, right? Christmas.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, and he did that a few times. Yeah, you're right, because that was towards the end of his first season, and going into season 2, we were like, wow, that's kind of what he's carrying in, and we were still feeling pretty positive about him. And then obviously the season goes the way it does. He gets injured. Mason comes in, and that's the way it goes. But to answer your question, Paul, they were put in such a weird situation that year where it was kind of Kenny Pickett or bust. We know what's happened to the other guys in that class with Malik Willis and, even Sam Howell. And like I say, it should have been Brock Purdy, but we can deliberate that all we want. So, I don't know. To me, it seems like still he was the QB probably that you would take at that pick. I don't question the pick. And, it was Kevin Colbert's final pick. So we're kind of seeing a transition in the way things get done in the front office with the Steelers as well. Omar Khan clearly has a bit of a different agenda and is doing things a little bit differently, even in his first couple of years as the GM. So not too worried about that going forward. It is what it is. It was a bit of a delay, and hey, Justin Fields in the building now, so it all worked out.
Good stuff. All yours, Byron. You want to skip across next one?
Yeah. We went from a good segue, but now we have mentioned Justin Fields again, so we still have the segue. So yeah, it's Mr. Unlimited Fields, the Steelers call. Well, can he get put on the picket line? Not actually mentioned there, but yeah. Obviously, you get the 2 senior quarterbacks in the building now. Tomlin obviously going nowhere, 3-year extension signed, so whoever's wishing for his departure is going to have to put those wishes on hold a little longer. Yep. Like I say, we've got an adult in the building. Arthur Smith FedEx out of Atlanta, but is in Pittsburgh as OC. And Matt Canada, posted out, thankfully.
Joe's made post office related jokes.
Great stuff.
In the visuals.
And top draft picks used to beef up the O-line, which is now looking, beefy is the word, I think. And wide receiver room, though, is looking bare, especially after George Pickens, obviously Deontay Johnson out to Carolina in the offseason. Yeah, obviously the headline item is the quarterbacks. I think Russell Wilson's got a calf injury to start training camp, so Fields is getting, an earlier shot than we expected to be quarterback 1. How do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, it seems like it's Russell Wilson's job, and it doesn't really seem, outside of something crazy or an injury, that there's really a job here for Justin Fields to win. Now, that's not to say that things can't change really quickly in the season. The way that the Steelers' schedule plays out, and we've got, I think, the toughest schedule, if not one of the toughest in the league this season, along with the rest of the AFC North, just by want of playing each other.
Yeah.
And you look at the way the season plays out for the Steelers, and at the end of the season is all of the tough games. It really is crazy. You look after Christmas, and it is just a brutal gauntlet of games. So the Steelers really need to kick off to a good start, which is something they haven't always done.
I know you're saying it there, but I've got the schedule up. So the bye's week 9, at Washington week 10. Enjoy that one.
That's going to be the final grace you get.
Yeah, from 11 through 18. I won't do home and aways, but it's Baltimore, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. That is a murderer's row.
Awful, isn't it?
That's not an easy game, and it doesn't matter if they're home or away. That is rough.
Yeah, so you better hope that you're, winning week 1 in Atlanta, Arthur Smith. You know what I mean? Like, we can't be letting anything go by the by this season like we have done in seasons past. So so all that's to say, I have been saying on the show, I've not been calling for this or anything, but I just want to float it out there that Steelers fans haven't always been the most patient fan base when it comes to some of the QBs we've seen when we wanted a certain guy in. Yep. Fields has a certain magnetism and a certain pull. You can already feel it in this fan base, but so does Russell Wilson, in fairness, and the performance is going to be the indicator. And, whoever comes out and balls is who the fans are going to like ultimately. But I'm just a little bit wary of Russ's position. I'm not predicting his downfall. I actually think it's a really settling place for him, and I really think that he could have, if not, a crazy second act, a really solid second act and stabilize this franchise a little bit. And then we see where we go from there next year. But, just keep your eye out, because it might not be a QB battle right now in training camp, but by week 4, we'll soon have our answer about who the QB might be going for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think it is such an interesting one, because I think Russell Wilson is a great fit for Arthur Smith as well. But while you have Justin Fields in the building, if you're not winning games, it's always going to be a question, because he just has that ability to just take off and change games. And I did find it interesting as well. We'll get to the full bet preview at the end of our preview here, but Russell Wilson's over-under for the season was 2750, so 2,750 yards. He's never gone under that in his career. But obviously that's playing into how many games is he going to start.
Yeah.
If he starts 17 games, he hits that without any kind of doubt. Might be an interesting one to put on if Wilson holds a job all season, because, like I say, I think as part of their adults in the room discussion, I think Wilson, again, is much more of a veteran presence.
Yep.
He's done it successfully over and over. Obviously, we've touched on Arthur Smith, Matt Canada. I think kind of anything is an upgrade over Matt Canada, really.
It was just, again, another failed experiment, another promotion from within that doesn't work out. And I think you're starting to see Tomlin's hand forced a little bit now to look outside the building and be a little bit more inventive about where some of the ideas are coming from.
And Arthur Smith, I think he was fantasy football's worst enemy. He started his years as a head coach in Atlanta, but as an OC in Tennessee, it's easy to say he got the best out of Derrick Henry, but he structured that offense really well. Ryan Tannehill got moving, which Russell Wilson can do, Justin Fields can do. The tight end, I think Pat Fryermuth, I think, is in for a breakout season this year. Not sure if you share that optimism. Obviously, kind of touches on the wide receiver room looking bare, but Fryermuth's been a weapon throughout. Not maybe super consistent, but I think this is his year because Wilson loves targeting tight ends down the field. Arthur Smith will feed tight ends like nothing else. So
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
It might be a narrow tree in terms of receivers, but I think the ones that are going to be featured are going to get featured a lot.
Yeah, he might frustrate, George Pickens fantasy owners. That is to be seen, but there's not a lot in that wide receiver room, as you say. There's been a lot of debate about, is there going to be a big trade? Brandon Ayuk's name's been floated a lot. I've put all that to rest. I think now we need to move on. There's a lot of wide receiver threes in that room. I mean, just this is interesting. Just listen to some of the names in this room that maybe some of the listeners won't know are in the Steelers wide receiver room right now. Van Jefferson. Calvin Austin III, a draft pick from last year. We'll see what you get out of him, a speedy guy. Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins, Des Fitzpatrick, Marquez Callaway, once of the Saints. There's a who's who of wide receivers in this room right now. And
Roman Wilson hits and there's targets for him.
Yeah, Roman Wilson, of course, the draft pick from this year. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'm hoping that Roman Wilson kind of cements his place very early in the slot, but we shall see. I think ultimately, though, as you say, we're going to see a lot of two tight end sets. Arthur Smith's brought in Michael Pruitt, who isn't a sexy name, but is a guy who's followed Arthur Smith around. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of Pat Fryermuth, as you say, running up the seam. He's doing well in camp so far, supposedly. And I think we're going to see maybe a little bit of Michael Pruitt as a blocking tight end on the other side, run a lot of two tight end sets.
Speaks a lot for, again, we're not a fantasy show, but Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, I don't know if you just draft both of them in fantasy this year.
It's fascinating.
I think they're both going to eat because, and also you didn't mention there in the tight end room, but like a player I've kind of been fascinated by, you can have a better insight than I will have done in last season. Darnell Washington, he's a freak athlete.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they're going to get out of him, like whether it'll be, 20 catches for 7 touchdowns, that kind of thing wouldn't surprise me. I've been as a 7-4 lineman maybe with Pruitt. I just think there's something there that I think Arthur Smith in particular will enjoy trying to get out of because, again, he's just a freak athlete. It's
a really cool like room in terms of its construction with a guy like Muth who's so good on the move, an absolute physical freak like Washington, like you said, and I mean, if you could imagine a lineup with Michael Pruitt one side, Washington the other, just a real jumbo set running 21 personnel, you can really see it. Najee in the backfield, a big booming back like that. That's why it was a bit of a surprise to me that the Steelers didn't sign his 5th-year option. I thought they would because, I thought that kind of back just to get an extra year of him on a kind of just a guaranteed deal at a certain price, you can just kind of run the tires out would be kind of beneficial. But, I think it is what it is. It's a win-win. I think he gets the free agency a year earlier. And Jalen Warren is our favorite sound drop on our show is, I love Jalen Warren from Kyle Brandt. That dude is everyone's favorite Steeler right now. I mean, he is an absolute beast. There's no one as fun to watch in the NFL running the football right now as Jalen Warren.
Yeah, he's electric. Yeah. And, I'm just thinking now, like when you're speaking of them double tight end jumbo set, put Warren in the backfield, put Harris in the backfield, get Justin Fields under center.
Oh, yeah, you get crazy.
Oh, I can't wait to. I'm already imagining this is now happening.
I really hope he gets creative. That's what I mean. I'm really hoping we get creative with it this year.
Tannehill was not traditionally a great running quarterback, but in Tennessee, he got a lot of touchdowns, and a lot of that was near the end zone. And we fake it, Derrick Henry, and Ryan Tannehill wanders in. Well, you do that Justin Fields, and you get that jumbo set in play. I think.
And listen, money. that creativity is exactly what this offense needs because believe it or not, I mean, we could move the ball between the 20s last season. It was really you can look at the touchdown stats yourself if you're interested. It was bizarre. I mean, there was just no passing offense at all in the end zone. It was awful.
So, I remember I don't remember the exacts of it, but it was always like Tommy DeVito now has more 2 touchdown games than Kenny Pickett. It's like you don't need to hear that. And want to move on to our free agent moves, draft moves for 2024?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So we've gone over a few of these already. Obviously, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields come in. Patrick Queen comes in from Baltimore. That's always fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we get a lot of those, man. Mike Hilton went over to the Bengals. That was a big one in recent years. And now Patrick Queen comes over. Recently ranked the 64th best player in the NFL, according to his peers in the NFL Top 100, which I was interested to see. But yeah, I mean, that linebacker core for the Steelers looking really beefed up all of a sudden. That's gone from a weakness to a strength with him, Peyton Wilson, who we drafted, who looks really good, man, in training camp. I loved his tape, ACL or not. And Landon Roberts is a name, man. I don't know if you guys are kind of checked into that guy, but He came over as a free agent last season. And, when Cole Holcomb went down with a major knee injury for us, who was supposed to be a huge part of our defense last season, he was the green dot wearer. Landon Roberts came in, and he had a reputation for being like a big hitter, and that was kind of all he did in Miami. And he came in, and dude, he has been a rock for this team. I mean, just an excellent all-around linebacker who comes down, lays booming hits. And man, I don't like to think what the Steelers defense might have become in the middle of the season without Landon Roberts. So really good depth and strength in that linebacker core now, yeah. Nice.
And yeah, we touched on the draft of the O-linemen. I love both. Truthfully, I love all the first 4 picks they made. I don't know much about the McCormick, Logan Lee, Ryan Watson, players outside of my knowledge base, I must say. But Peyton Wilson, I think, might be one of the best picks in the entire draft come the end of it. Like you say, his training camp videos already are like
so cool.
He stands out immediately. And like, not easy for a rookie linebacker to do on day 3 of camp. Roman Wilson, I think, is going to be a very solid receiver in the NFL. Frazier and Fortanu are just beef. They're just big guys who are going to push you around. I think they're going to be better run blockers than pass blockers, probably, but that's absolutely fine in Pittsburgh, I think. I think it's going to be a lot of run the ball, we're going to bully you around.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot of moves there. Who do you think, if you had to put one name on it, is going to be the MVP of how the Steelers season goes 2024?
Of the rookies or
no. Entire 53.
Oh man, well, it's hard to look past. It's maybe a bit boring, so I might give you 2 names, but it's hard to look past TJ Watt.
Yeah,
obviously. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stats that get floated around, but I mean, we don't win games that TJ Watt doesn't play in.
Yeah,
he is the quarterback of this team in a bizarre way, and it's just the way this team runs. And we can pretend that Myles Garrett is as good as TJ Watt all day, and we can pretend that PFF understands what it's talking about. But I think we all watch the games and we all understand. And we'll leave it at that. But listen,
guest appearance from JJ Watt as well. Here we go.
the game runs through TJ Watt, man, and when TJ Watt is not, powering with that full motor, this team often isn't, and it's hard to look past him. But honestly, it's about, I think now, especially when we've seen Ben leave, it's about creating that kind of backbone throughout the team, because for a long time we really kind of, we kind of brought in Patrick Peterson, right? And we were kind of bringing these guys in to kind of fill those leadership roles. Najee Harris even was filling that role as like a newly drafted guy. You had Kenny Pickett, who was a bit of a leadership vacuum. So it's about filling those guys. And dude, again, I don't want to keep exhausting his name, but Jaylen Warren is the name to think of when you think of that guy. This is a guy who's never in his entire career, high school, college, football, he's never stepped foot on a football field without his helmet on. He will not remove his helmet on the football field. He is locked in. Nice. He is nuts. And do you know what he said? When Kenny picked, so someone asked him just before training camp, I think during the OTAs, how it was going with the new QBs and the new offense and stuff. And Jaylen Warren said, dude, it's night and day in here compared to how it was last year. That dude does not mince words. He does not care. He knows, and he can say what he wants because he's the first guy in the building, the last guy out the building, and everybody loves Jaylen Warren. He's the guy you need to set your watch to on this team. So it's kind of a little bit of a mix, but I think it's about getting guys like that form like a really great backbone that is, what the Steelers are about. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm glad you went with someone not TJ Watt, because normally when we ask this kind of question, I'm always like, who's the MVP who's not a quarterback? But like you said, TJ Watt is the QB. He is the franchise. So it's like, TJ Watt is obviously the MVP. But I'm glad you gave another one. And I love that it's Jaylen Warren, because everything I see of him, I like. You're much more knowledge than I do on him. But I'm so glad that that's like a universal thing, because I know, again, a lot of what I do is the fantasy, and he always stands out to me. End of last season, he was always one of my favorite players to put bets on to get over X amount of yards, and he pretty much always hit. And he always does it in such a fun way,
really hits those explosive runs. He really hits those explosive runs. And man, I mean, he's bringing dudes down and carrying guys with him that are twice the size of him sometimes. He's a really fun dude to watch. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's all our free agent moves, our draft. Let's get on to the meat of it. Future odds. So Steelers win total is 7.5.
It's madness.
Where are you going with that?
It's
over is minus 170, under is plus 140, so slightly juiced to the over, but slightly. I'm surprised it's so low, truthfully.
Yeah, the bookies just not learned the lesson, have they? This one, I don't know. The Steelers have hit the over every year, and God knows how many years is what I hear on every betting show that I listen to. So, it seems like the obvious thing to take the Steelers over here. You'd be shocked, wouldn't you, if it went the other way? I think the question, of course, is the division. How things shake out with those QBs. It's such an uncertain. I think that's playing into it a little bit. The uncertainty with 4 new QBs in a room. It's never happened before with the Steelers. And is this team going to go on and progress from where it was last year, or are we potentially looking at needing to reboot this a little bit harder with a new QB next season? So I would be saying bet the over, but maybe you think I'm biased. I don't know.
Well, I always do I'll pick every game on the NFL playoff predictor site, which I always recommend to people. Just playoffpredictors.com, and you can pick whatever leagues. I always just do NFL. And I have the Steelers at 7 wins exactly, but I mean, that's one of the ones I feel least. I have them and the Saints about the ones I feel least confident about. So like 7.5 feels like it's an easy bet to go the over. Like I have the Saints at 6 wins, and it's like they're not good enough to get 6 wins, but they're in such a shit division.
Yeah.
Whereas the Steelers
it's kind of the opposite.
Too good to like they're too good to only have 7 wins, but like that down the stretch schedule is so brutal.
Yeah.
They're like if they win one of those or 2 of those games, then they go over without any question. So it's not one I would bet in, because when I came out with it at 7, I was like, I probably need to have another look here. Truthfully, because
here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say if I know the Steelers. You can look at the schedule and we can all pick it, right? And we'll pick us to win those early games, and we'll pick us to lose those late games. And what'll happen is the Steelers will start off slow. We'll drop a few games we don't expect, and somehow Tomlin will rally a dead team to beat the Chiefs and beat the Bengals and beat the Browns in the league. And it'll just be a crazy season. That's the way it goes with the Steelers. So I don't know. I wouldn't write them off. It probably won't go the way we expect, but they'll end up there somewhere thereabouts in the 9th or 10th spot.
Yeah, they'll probably get 9 wins. We just won't know how. And then the follow-on from that is, do the Steelers make the playoffs? So they're just plus money to make the playoffs. If Paul's going to click the thing for us.
Yes, sorry.
They're plus 175 to make the playoffs, and minus 210 to miss out. What do we think? And then division winners plus 700, conference winners plus 2,500, 25 to 1. And to win the Super Bowl, get a bit rich, 45 to 1.
I'll take it. Yeah.
So what would you take here, though?
Yeah, it's funny. We did an exercise on the show recently where we all we went through every team we did on 2 episodes, through the AFC on 1 episode, then through the NFC on the next, and just kind of went through the rosters briefly and discussed like where do we think the Steelers would place if we just did a simple yes/no exercise. Would we beat this team on a given day? Would we put them ahead or below the Steelers at this time? And we counted that up in the AFC. That put us in the final wildcard spot. The way that we played that out. Now, listen, the Steelers have kind of been in that spot for the last 5 years, like I say. It's where we've qualified a few times now to get into the wildcard spots when we've made the playoffs, or we've been just outside. But it does feel right now like the oppressive weight of some of the quality of the quarterbacks and the offenses in the AFC just pushes things down. And the Steelers are certainly fighting. And if things go right, with the QBs and the defense, you can never rule them out of even winning this division. I mean, we don't know what's going on with Joe Burrow. No. We don't know. Well, we expect the Ravens to be the same quality they have been recently, but of course. But anything can happen with Lamar Jackson. Yeah. And then the Browns. I mean, I won't speak on the Browns anymore. We'll just let the Browns do whatever they want to do, and when they figured it out, they can come back to us. But and
I mean, this division last year had 4 teams with 9 wins.
Right? Yeah,
9 or more, obviously. Like
tough division,
very tough division. And if you get 10, 11 with such tight. You might take the division.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we all beat up on each other. So, yeah.
Exactly. And realistically, out of 10, what level of quarterback play do you need to be a really good Pittsburgh team?
Right.
7, 6?
And that's what some of the argument has been, right? Some of the optimism comes from the idea that, well, we had Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph last year. We got 9 wins, and the defense was great. And we've upgraded the defense, and we've upgraded the offense. You would argue potentially. Yeah. So, that's the positive way. That's the positive spin. But everyone's got better in the offseason,
Exactly, yeah. It's hope season.
Yeah.
To quote another ATNism.
Yeah.
And I am aware that it's just been me and you talking a lot here, Si. Paul.
Yeah, just
2024 Steelers.
Line's crazy. Yeah, I can't see that. I just cannot see how the Steelers don't get to 9 wins. Like it's just even the fact that even if you just get a half-cooked Russell Wilson, if he's going to be the quarterback, that's miles better than what they've had from kind of Pickett and Rudolph. I know they went on a bit of a run towards the end of the season last year, but just that bit of consistency, a bit more creativity in the offense. I think the defense that was already really good has got better. Love the first 4 draft picks. So we talked a lot last year how good these Detroit Lions rookies were and the difference they made to that team. I think there's 4 picks there that can all have a massive impact. The first 4 picks of the Steelers, the 2 linemen, Wilson and the two linemen and the two Wilsons, that can all have big impacts on the team. So yeah, I mean, I think a minimum 9 wins. I don't think the ceiling's much more than that, but 9 wins and possibly in the playoffs again. And I think we'll be sat here in January going, Mike Tomlin's done it again.
Yeah.
And there is we keep our future odds page pretty templated on this, but one that I just wanted to shout out, as I think I didn't put it in my actual best of bets for the AFC North, but I think it is an interesting one. Steelers to lose in the wildcard round is plus 320. And it just feels like that has kind of become like the Steelers season. Win 9-10 games, exit the first stage, pick 21st in the draft.
Yeah.
And yeah, plus 320. I prefer that to just make the playoffs.
Yeah. I almost think Steelers fans would be kind of more upset if we did lose in the wildcard round. I mean, don't get me wrong, they'd be upset if we lost the playoffs, but I think they might see that coming. I think losing the wildcard round again, people might start to go a little bit loony in Pittsburgh.
I think it's 5 in a row, isn't it? 5 in a row, 5 playoff losses in a row. So they've just got to that first stage. So they're just not seeing that success that you mentioned earlier on. So yeah, it's interesting, but. For that to change, something's got to give, and I think it has to be a big change, and that's just not what the Pittsburgh Steelers are in the business of doing, is it? So
yeah, no, they're making incremental changes, and they are changing and growing, and I think at the minute they're committed to sticking with the old guard and what worked about that, but developing and modernizing in the way that Omar Khan operates as a GM. You can see that, so I'm all for it because I think if you can enhance what Mike Tomlin does best. And, similar to Bill Belichick in a lot of ways, right? People always said that about him. Obviously, a lot more successful, but there's certain things that these guys can do so well, and if you can just make sure that those are the things that they're focused on, I think that's what's the most important thing.
And yeah, the highs were higher with Belichick, but Mike Tomlin hasn't been tossed out on his ear with 3 wins.
Yeah, no, not yet. Certainly,
it's just it's really tough. It is a victim of your own success every year.
That's it.
Because you never get to draft a Trevor Lawrence or a Joe Burrow because you're too good.
Yeah, but you couldn't. But hey, listen, you can use all those excuses, but you could have drafted a Lamar Jackson and a Brock Purdy. You had every opportunity.
The Lamar Jackson one killed me for so many teams in the NFL.
Yeah,
Purdy, I'll give him more of a leash on because
they got no excuses in our books, man. We could not have shouted any louder about Brock Purdy, and they wouldn't listen to us.
Just need to get in the room.
Just get me in the room, man. Come on.
Simon, that brings us to the end of our Pittsburgh Steelers preview. Thanks ever so much again for joining us. Everyone go give the Steelers podcast, even if you're not a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, go give these guys a follow. They're doing great work as part of the kind of the fan podcast in the UK. UK Steelers podcast at UK Steelers Pod on Twitter. You can go get the podcast on wherever you get your podcast from. So whether that's Spotify, Apple, wherever else. There's loads of places you can get
wherever. I use Overcast. That's mine.
Me too.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's the esteemed man's podcast.
It is, yeah.
One we're not available on, but that's fine. But yeah,
so esteemed people, yeah,
exactly. So Simon, hopefully we'll have you on during the season. So it'd be great to have you back on.
Yeah,
kind of check in, see how things are going with Pittsburgh Steelers during 2024. That's the end of our previews. We've done all 4 teams. We're now going to move on to our best bets section for the AFC North and see what early tips we've got for you. Thanks for coming, Simon. We'll see you soon, buddy.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, guys. Speak to you soon.
Thanks again to Simon Winstanley there from the UK Steelers podcast for helping us take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've done all 4 teams. We're on to our best bets, our podium bets. We're joined by Joe. Joe's back. He was away. Now he's not. How are we doing, Joe? All right?
Yeah, I'm doing all good.
Excellent. Good stuff. Let's get into what we do best, and that is our best bets for the AFC North. As always, I'm up first. My bronze bet for the AFC North is Joe Burrow over 27.5 passing touchdowns. It's quite a short odds on that one. Obviously, there's been a few concerns when Joe Burrow's been hurt at various points. So if he plays 15 games, he'll get, I think, 28 touchdown passes. So I could probably allow for a little injury there as well. Given kind of his back from his wrist injury, he had the calf problem going into the start of last season. So, and it typically takes Joe Burrow and the Bengals a couple of weeks to get going as well. So, over 27.5, so 28 or more passing touchdowns for Joe Burrow at minus 115 is my bronze bet. Clicked the wrong way. My silver bet Joe Burrow over 4,100 and a half passing yards, minus 140. Similar sort of thing, really. I think, when we've seen Joe Burrow have a full season, and the full seasons that he has had in 21 and 22, he's been comfortably above that number. 4,600 passing yards in 21, 44, just short of 4,500 passing yards in 2022, both with over 30 touchdowns. So that's why kind of where I'm at. I'm hitting. This is a big comeback season for Joe Burrow after his difficulties last year. And then gold, we've just been talking with Simon. I like the Steelers to get to 9 wins, so I'm taking them at over 8.5. Just to get that little bit of juice in the odds at plus 125. So it's weird that my longest odds bet is my gold one. It's the one I'm most confident in. But the Pittsburgh Steelers over 8.5 wins. I know it's a tough division, and I know they have got those last 8 games are horrific. Quite frankly, the run that they've got, but they'll pick up a couple of divisional wins. They'll find a way to win, maybe one or even more of those games, and they should do enough on the easier part of the schedule to get to 9 wins. Whether that's enough for the postseason or not, I don't know. But over 8.5 at plus 125 is my gold bet for the AFC North. Gents, what do we think?
Yeah, weirdly, I prefer your silver and bronze to your gold. Joe Burrow in the 2 seasons he started 16 games. His lowest touchdown total is 34. His lowest passing yardage is 44.75. You're basically betting on him, like you say, playing 14, 13 maybe games, which seems likely more than unlikely. I know he's had his injury problems, but I think you kind of have to assume health. He's coming into the season fitting well. The Steelers I struggle with. I don't think I bet in the Steelers line at all. I think it is probably too low just about, but I struggle getting them to 9 wins when I'm picking them, so it's probably not one I'm going to bet on, but it's easy to see the logic. They never fall short of 9, so yeah.
Yeah, makes sense all going on. But as I said, it's just going to be the injuries. He's going to have plenty of games where he scores 3 touchdowns to probably cover when they play another AFC North game where it's usually a low-scoring one. But yeah, with their wide receivers and that team, if he's fit, he'll get it. I think, it's basically all on his fitness.
And that hairdo. Byron, over to you.
Cool, cheers. Yeah, so my bronze bet, I was really torn on this one, whether to include it or not, because it's Lamar Jackson to get 10 or more rushing touchdowns. Obviously, we expect Derrick Henry is going to get the vast majority of them. But I wonder if there's going to be a little bit of trickery there as well, of you sell out to stop Derrick Henry, and we'll have Lamar sneak in for a few. He's never got 10 in his career. He's had 7 twice, 5 twice, 3 and 2, I think, in his partial seasons. And I just think it seems weird that he doesn't ever have a 10 rushing touchdown season. And at 20-1, I just think it's a bet that you can afford to make and maybe lose. I think there's an easy way to see that he gets to 10, though. Like I said, just he'll get a few just on the runs generally, intended runs, a couple of scrambles, and then if they just kind of have any kind of funky goal line designs that give him the ball, fake Derrick Henry in, I think, 10's easy in his range. So 20-1, I like that one.
The Gus Bus was a favourite. It wasn't like a goal line favourite. And
yeah, he got 13 touchdowns last year, and I think the vast majority of them were within the 5. So, if 3 or 4 of them go to Lamar, it's easy to get him to 10.
Excellent. Next up.
Silver one. Cleveland start 5-0. So Cleveland's first 5 games, they start home to the Cowboys. I think they should be relatively heavily favoured in that game. Not like 10 points, but should be favourite. The toughest game I think they have is at Jacksonville. Week 2. Pick'em game, I would dare say. I think they've got the better defense, certainly. Maybe slightly worse offense, but see what you get out of it. And then home against the Giants, road to the Raiders, on the road to Washington. I don't think it's a stretch to go 5-0 at plus 900 there. I think 9-1's a really good price for that. Obviously, Cowboys fan, but I think I would take the Browns in pretty much all aspects, really, over the Cowboys. At home as well, week 1. And to me, it's just, do they go into Jacksonville and beat them? If they do, I think you'll be sitting really pretty at 9-1, knowing that you've got the Giants, the Raiders, and the Commanders to play.
Browns currently 1.5 point favourites as we stand now against the Cowboys in week 1.
Yeah, I thought there might be I think they should be more than that. I think it should be more like a field goal, but probably might be my favourite of the week then come week 1. Not getting ahead of our draft picks, but I think they're a much better team than Dallas right now, truthfully. So, there's always that one issue, the quarterback, but I don't think Deshaun Watson was as bad as people think he was last year. He wasn't great, but I don't think he was quite as bad as people think. And it's another, off-season, another preseason where he's going to be getting more to fitness, getting more in tune with the offense. And yeah, we'll see. But I just think I have him favoured in all 5 of those games. And I just think, 91's too big of a price there.
Nick Chubb being missing, I don't think has been talked about as much as contributing to the struggles that they had offensively, in particular the struggles that Deshaun Watson had when he went down in week 2.
Yep.
Was it week 2? Week 3?
Yeah.
It was very early. Week 2. So, I feel like that hasn't really been discussed.
And he's looking ahead of schedule, or looking certainly on schedule, which stuns me because I thought he might never play football again. But squatting nearly 600 pounds. Mary Kay Cabot had a report that he's cutting in camp. They didn't have video of it because the Browns weren't letting him record that part of practice. But if he's cutting in camp already, I don't think he's missing much of the season. So, I'm very wheels up on the Browns this season. And that gets us to our gold medal bet, short of price. Browns and the Bengals to make the playoffs, plus 246, 2.5 to 1, essentially. I just struggle to see how both of them don't get to 10 plus wins. I think they're both just really, really strong teams. It is a strong division, obviously, but Bengals nearly made the playoffs with no Joe Burrow last year. The Browns nearly made it. Well, not nearly made it, sorry. The Browns did make it with no Nick Chubb, no Deshaun Watson. Defense can go down a little and still be one of the best in the league. I struggle to see how either of them don't make it, barring major injuries, and I don't really bet with that in mind. So,
well, the Browns made it even with significant injuries last year as well, didn't they? So they did it. To do everything. Cool. Joe, thoughts on Byron's all plus ads as well?
Yeah, I like his bronze one. You'll see from my bronze one, I'm similar with Byron in that sense. I do worry about the Browns. That QB, I'm just not super confident. Obviously, they've got 4 in the building. Does that say anything about their confidence in Watson going forward? I think because I think the start of the year he is going to start, so it depends on him. And is that defense going to be able to stick to that high level where we've seen there's not many defenses which year on year is the number one. So I think that's the big start. But that 5-0 is definitely, when I saw that, I changed some of my odds because when I looked at the schedule, I was like, oh yeah, they've actually got an easy start. So I'll not go for the that I was going to go for. But
I thought you changed yours. But we disagree on the Browns.
And the Browns, I think that's the one. I don't think right now. I'm not 100% sure on the Browns making the playoffs just because of that division. Just because I'm similar with like the Steelers. I don't think the Steelers. Yeah, they're just that team who win 9. So if they win 9, it could be the same as last year, but overall, especially that silver one, I do really like that one.
It's interesting with the Browns because I think it's on the road. It's on the defense was real bad on the road, wasn't it? Where he conceded. I think it was more than 34 times on the road last year.
He had some crazy games. That Colts game, I think.
Colts game, 39-38, the Ravens game in Baltimore was crazy. I think the Bengals put 30. I think it might have been week 18 and everything was already settled, but that Bengals team put 30 on them as well. And Texans put 45 on them in the playoffs. So, interesting. 9-1's a good price, though, for the 5-0. Cool. Joe, finishes off then.
Yeah, so my bronze, like I mentioned, similar to Barry, but I've got Lamar Jackson going over 1,000 rushing yards. I think, like you mentioned with the TDs, he's probably going to go to Derrick Henry when they get close to the lines. That's what kept me away from that one. But he's been over 1,000 twice in his career. And when you look at his average rush per game, it's at 61. So if he plays 17, he should be over 1,000. The problem is Ravens have normally qualified for the playoffs in the last week too, so he doesn't play. But I just think similar with Henry taking a lot of the focus away, and he's going to be a big part of the game. Can Lamar Jackson make some big runs and get in that way? And at plus 320, I did like the price where I see maybe not scoring tons of touchdowns, but having huge gains because the defense are focused on stopping Henry in that sense.
Cool, excellent. Is silver one, Joe?
My silver is... So I've been looking at quite a few of these. There's wide receiver receiving yards. And I did like that George Pickens ones over 1,025.5 at evens. I just think when you look at that room and, you got Jefferson as the number 2. It's not looking great. So I think they're going to target George Pickens quite a lot. And what Wilson and Fields are, good at is that deep ball. And I think Pickens with his big frame is certainly going to rack up the yards. And it's, again, one of them players, I feel like if he stays fit, it's going to hit over 1,000 yards. So I do like that price and that bet.
Cool. And then your gold one.
And finally, it's TJ Watt to be Defensive Player of the Year because it's a plus 700. I was surprised he wasn't the favourite, but I feel like the Defensive Player of the Year is getting more narrative now where it's just choosing someone who, if they have a good year, but then they missed out on it the year before, they normally get extra votes. And there was a lot of noise about that TJ Watt should have got it last year. And it feels like Miles Garrett should have probably got it the year before. And it's all that kind of, we'll give it to them now because they probably deserve it. So I think if TJ Watt, again, another player stays fit, he's going to rack up the sacks. He's going to certainly be near the top and leading the way. And I think at plus 700, it's good odds because, like I said, it's I think he's like the 4th or 5th favourite. Is around that anyway. So yeah, I do like that. And like I said, if he has a good year with everything what JJ was saying and a lot of people were saying in the media, I think he's going to get that. Oh, we'll give it to TJ Watt this year if it's a coin toss.
Is due.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Byron, on Joe's?
Yeah, I like all of them really. Pickens, I'm not sure what Pickens has had in his last 2 years. I should have looked it up really while you were talking, but there's no one else catching too many. I mean, I think Pat Freiermuth's going to have a good year for the Steelers, but after Freiermuth, it is really Pickens or bust, I think, in the receiving game. And, he has a good air dot as well. He gets downfield. Russell Wilson throws a nice deep ball. If he's fit all season, I don't know how he gets to under 102.5. Yeah, George plus 11.40 you got last year with Mason Rudolph, Trubisky, Pickett. Yeah, I don't know how if he plays 17 games, that's an absolute smash at plus money. And TJ Watt, DPOY, I mean, plus 700, it just, again, it's one of 3 or 4, isn't it, who's going to get it? Plus 700, I don't think he can knock that price. And I do like that angle of his due one. Like I said, JJ Watt made such a stinking fuss about it last year that I think that'll play into voters' minds. If it's a tough one between him and Garrett or him and Parsons and what have you, well, TJ Watt should have got it last year. Let's just give him one extra vote. Give him one, it adds up certainly. So yeah, plus 700. I think that's a nice bet as well.
Excellent, good stuff. Yeah, I like that TJ. TJ Defensive Player of the Year one, very dependent, I think, on him staying fit, and we've seen him miss a lot of games in recent years. So for me, he's got to stay fit because that's a real easy one to dismiss him of if he's missed a few games or whatever to put him out the running potentially. So. But yeah, I like them. George Pickens, 1,100 yards in that offense last year. You think it'll be better this year? I think it was 1,100 yards of 63 receptions. So I think surely be closer to somewhere to 75 receptions. And that should maybe be in the 1,300 yard range. Yeah. So we'll see. Lamar Jackson, interesting. That was interesting. So that has to be kind of a return to really running him a lot more to get to 1,000 yards. I'm not sure, but yeah. Just over 3-1. It's a good price. Gents, that wraps up the AFC North. Just like that. Thanks very much to our guests. We had our Browns fan, UK Browns fan, and Simon Winstanley from the Pittsburgh Steelers, the UK Steelers podcast. Go give those guys a follow. And go
halfway, right?
Sorry, halfway. Yes, that's our 4. So we've done the Easts, we've done the Norths. We're on to the Souths and the Wests next. So we're halfway through our division preview series. Going pretty well so far. So if you've just joined us because you are a UK Steelers podcast follower and you wanted to check in on Size Bit and you enjoyed what you saw from Good Teams Win Great Teams cover, stick around. Drop us a follow. Follow us on Spotify. Good Teams Win Great Teams cover over on Spotify. You'll be notified when a new episode drops. Also, give us a follow on our YouTube if you want to see our faces and the wonderful PowerPoints that Joe puts together on the screen. Also, give us a follow on YouTube, Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok at GTW_GTC. And we'll be back next time. So our next one, and I'm pretty sure I'm right with this, our next one is our 100th episode. This is our 100th episode of Good Teams and Great Teams cover. We will do something special for it. We'll release one in between our next division episode because quite rightly, I think we're onto the NFC South, and that probably shouldn't mark the 100th episode of the show. So
we have football this week as well. It's a Hall of Fame game Thursday. It's Saturday, sorry, in fact. In my mind, it's always Thursday, but I think it might be. It is Thursday, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I said Saturday, and I was like, no, the induction's a Saturday. Game's Thursday, I believe. But yeah, it's football this week anyway, whatever day it is. So we are getting close.
We are getting closer.
Oof. That isn't going to be our special. Our
no,
special episode isn't going to be a Hall of Fame game recap.
No. Good stuff. No, we're not doing that. Excellent. Yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.